Chapter 752. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. When you haven't lost something, you don't know how precious it is to have it. Baidu search AI Go female sign Xiao, say www.aichuxs. Xiaofan she used to be a 7-star saint and stood at the top of the cultivators. After her cultivation was greatly damaged, she lost all hope. After being subdued by night sorrow, she didn't even want to live anymore. But then she saw hope for the next step, so she let go of everything. Besides, after being subdued, she had already lost everything in front of night sorrow. She did not mind losing anything in front of night sorrow. All right. As I said before, as long as you are well and obedient, I will let you live a better life. Night sorrow looked at Shi and said. After night sorrow finished speaking, he continued to meditate and stabilize his cultivation. In his current state of cultivation, night sorrow did not have to worry about increasing his cultivation. The difficulty was that he needed to spend a long time to stabilize his cultivation. After stabilizing his cultivation base for 2 days, night sorrow left the secret cultivation room and returned to his mansion. In the manor, Sikong Chuyu and the other two were practicing their sword techniques. They had all advanced in their cultivation and were focusing on stabilizing their cultivation. Seeing night sorrow come out, the 3 women stopped their cultivation. They brewed tea and chatted with night sorrow. Not bad. However, we can't rush the step of stabilizing our cultivation. We don't lack resources. Increasing our cultivation isn't difficult. The difficult part is stabilizing, night sorrow said. After staying with the girls for a while, night sorrow went to see Papa Gu who was cultivating. After that, he went to the lakeside and started cultivating the spatial crack. After advancing, night sorrow still needed to stabilize his cultivation. Once his cultivation stabilized, he could continue to use the dragon spirit pills and desolate stones to increase his cultivation. When night sorrow came back at night, he saw Lin Yuandao. Master K, what's the situation in Clear Sky City? Night sorrow asked. There's no way to get close. There are more and more spatial soul-devouring beasts, and the spatial turbulence is filled with those things. Lin Yuandao sighed and shook his head. Then let's continue cultivating, Yishang said. Night Sorrow's plan was to wait until his cultivation reached the middle stage of the Venerable Realm. Then, he would go to the spatial turbulence and see if the void protective air shield could stop the spatial soul-eater beast. In addition, Shi disappeared without a trace, as if she had disappeared. Lin Yuandao said. Maybe she went to find a place to cultivate. She shouldn't be a threat to anyone anymore, Night Sorrow said. Let's hope so. I'm just here to have a look. Your cultivation base is rising too quickly. Let me give you a word of advice. Haste makes waste. A solid foundation is important. However, there is no problem with the solidity of your true energy. After talking about Night Sorrow, Lin Yuandao smiled again. The main thing was that night sorrow showed no signs of having a shaky foundation. Then, after drinking a pot of tea, Lin Yuandao left. He had come to see how the young master of Tianji Tower was cultivating. Normally, night sorrow's cultivation should be guided by Lin Yuandao. However, night sorrow didn't need any guidance from him. Then, night sorrow asked the girls about Wu Ling concubine's situation. Aunt Fei occasionally comes out for a cup of tea. The rest of the time, she is cultivating in the attic, Yanglei said. Well, I don't know how the clansmen are doing in the Sea of Night Moon. When I have time, I will go to the island and ask 6th uncle. Night Sorrow said. He was eager to see his parents as soon as possible. However, when the Night Clan would come out, perhaps only Yi Lingxia would know. After cultivating for another 2 days, Night Sorrow decided to go into seclusion. This made him feel a little embarrassed. However, the 3 girls sensed that Night Sorrow had something to say. Night Sorrow, do you have something to say? Yanglei asked. Yes, I am going into seclusion. This time, it might take a little longer, Night Sorrow said. Go. You can't delay your cultivation. If you are tired, come out and rest. Yanglei looked at Night Sorrow and said. She was happy and a little bitter. She was happy because Night Sorrow really cared about their feelings. She was bitter because Night Sorrow was going to cultivate alone again. I will. The 3 of you too. Don't be too tired because my heart will ache. You are all my favorite women, Night Sorrow said to the three girls. Aoi and Sikong Chuyu smiled in response to Night Sorrow. Then, Night Sorrow entered the secret cultivation room and the space-time pagoda. He took out the dragon's spirit pill and the desolate stone. He communicated with Shao Kong to help him cultivate his bloodline power and soul power. Night Sorrow took the dragon's spirit pill and started cultivating with the desolate stone in his hand. Looking at Night Sorrow cultivating, Shi curled her lips and continued cultivating. She still wanted to get some benefits from Night Sorrow. However, Night Sorrow did not think about that. With the help of the dragon's spirit pill and the desolate stone, Night Sorrow's cultivation increased. Time slipped away and 8 days passed. Night Sorrow took out another desolate stone and continued to increase his cultivation. After absorbing the 2 desolate stones, Night Sorrow's dragon spirit pill was not far from being refined. He did not continue to refine the desolate stone. After nearly 20 days, Night Sorrow ended his cultivation. His true Qi cultivation had reached the peak of level 3 Martial Saint realm. His myriad Dao treasured tome had also improved greatly. Although it was not at the peak of level 2 Spirit Refinement realm, it was not far from it. As Night Sorrow punched, the scenery in front of his fist changed. Time passed and the speed increased by a lot. In other words, the quality of the power of desolates in Night Sorrow's myriad Dao treasured tome had improved by a lot. Foremost a new $$ chapter N section? Night Sorrow roared. He was very happy with such an effect. You've improved a lot. Shi said as she brewed tea. It's still okay. What about you? Night Sorrow asked after sitting down. If you don't give it to me, how can I improve? I can only stabilize my true Qi cultivation. Shi glanced at Night Sorrow and said, You can't take it just because you want it, right? Night Sorrow drank a mouthful of water and said, Can't you have it at any time? You won't lose anything. Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said. Her thoughts had changed imperceptibly. She felt that there was something wrong with her when Night Sorrow did not touch her. I can't win against you in an argument. Night Sorrow could not reprimand her. After drinking a pot of tea, Night Sorrow left the space-time treasure pagoda and went to the courtyard of the mansion. When he did not see the 3 women in the mansion, Night Sorrow went to the martial arts practice field. In the martial arts practice field, Night Sorrow saw Sikong Chuyu and the other 2 cultivating with the others. When they saw Night Sorrow, the 3 of them ended their cultivation and came to Night Sorrow's side to brew tea on the stone table. 13. Where did you go? You still smell good. Aoi, who sat beside Night Sorrow, said as she sniffed. How is that possible? I just came out from the secret cultivation room. However, there were some flowers on the way. Night Sorrow's heart trembled. Because he was close to Shi, it might be that Shi's scent had contaminated his body. It's weird. It's different from the usual fragrance of flowers. It's more like a woman's scent. After saying that, Aoi stood up to brew tea. Night Sorrow let out a sigh of relief. He planned to teach Shi a lesson later. Wasn't she tricking him? Chapter 753. Genius 1 second. Remember love divided by go divided by little? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. What's this fragrance? If I didn't know that you've been cultivating, I would definitely ask you where you've been fooling around. Love, go little, say W. Chusikong Chuyu came to Night Sorrow's side and sniffed. Haha, don't be like this. I'm going to drink tea. Night Sorrow said with a smile. He was now convinced that Aoi, Yonglei, and Sikong Chuyu were all very smart. One mistake and there would be problems. $? Go first. After drinking tea, Night Sorrow found a rattan and said, Are you guys coming? This time, no one said anything and no one stood up. What's going on? Night Sorrow was a little puzzled. We want to improve ourselves, but we're not fools. Don't you guys know your current situation? Nanli US said. Sigh. Then I won't play with you guys anymore. Night Sorrow waved the rattan and threw it away. In the next few days, Night Sorrow accompanied the 3 girls and cultivated in the martial arts field every day. Night Sorrow cultivated his spear art and intent realm. At the same time, he consolidated his cultivation base. When they had dinner together again, Sikong Chuyu spoke. She wanted Night Sorrow to do his own things. Although it was important for everyone to be together, he couldn't delay his business. Yang Lei and Aoi also had the same idea. They didn't want to delay Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow decided to go to the island in the Realm Sea tomorrow. He also told the three girls that he wasn't sure when he would return. After cultivating for a night, he greeted the Sikong Chuyu trio and Papa Gu. Then he bowed towards the pavilion where Wu Lingfei was cultivating and went to the lakeside to check on Tianyu. Night Sorrow asked Tianyu to cultivate here in peace. However, Tianyu wanted to follow Night Sorrow, so Night Sorrow didn't refuse. He took the transformed Tianyu and left Sky City through the teleportation circle. After teleporting to How High City, Night Sorrow took out a flying ship and headed for the island in the Realm Sea with Tianyu. It was very extravagant for the two of them to sit on a flying ship, but Night Sorrow was rich enough that he didn't mind spending a few spirit stones. He and Tianyu drank some wine and arrived at the island in the Realm Sea in a very comfortable manner. Night Sorrow first went to see Yi Lingxia. When he saw Night Sorrow's cultivation, Yi Lingxia was shocked. Then his face lit up with joy. Your cultivation improved quickly and it's solid. That's great, Yi Lingxia said to Night Sorrow. It's not bad. Sixth uncle, what's the situation with the family? Night Sorrow asked. They'll come out soon. It won't be long. Also, your father has entered the half-step sage realm. The family wants us to stabilize, said Yi Lingxia. My father has cultivated to the half-step sage realm. That's great. Night Sorrow was very excited to hear that his father had entered the half-step sage realm. We don't need to worry. The Tianfeng dynasty has been destroyed and Chen Yuan is dead. Night Moon dynasty won't have much pressure to fight after returning, said Yi Lingxia. Sixth uncle, send a spy to find out the cultivation level of the 7-star saint from the 7-star dynasty, said Night Sorrow to Yi Lingxia. I've checked. This is the most difficult part. Night Moon can't handle it alone. He's a 5-star saint. If we can't handle it, we can only ask Tianji Tower for help, said Yi Lingxia. No need. I'll handle this. Don't ask for help. That's all. I'll go cultivate, said Night Sorrow to Yi Lingxia. You can handle it? Yi Lingxia asked in surprise. Love, go little, say W Chu. I don't need to ask for help or tell the family. I don't need to rush out either. It's best to stabilize. Night Sorrow nodded. Then, Night Sorrow left the place where Yi Lingxia and the others were cultivating. Yin Shi, you handle this matter. The 7-star saint is a 5-star saint. Hurry up and recover, then kill him for me. Night Sorrow communicated with Yin Shi. His soul power was in Yin Shi's mind, so Yin Shi naturally knew what he meant. Just now, Night Sorrow also let Yin Shi listen to his conversation with Yi Lingxia, so Yin Shi also knew what was going on. Alright. That's why you don't ask for help. But I want essence energy. I want to cultivate. When I become a saint again, I want to cultivate the wind essence body. At this time, Yin Shi didn't care so much and directly shouted her request in the space-time pagoda. Night Sorrow shook his head helplessly. He didn't understand what was going on. Then, Night Sorrow went to see Long Shensheng and drank a jar of wine with him. Only then did he go to Tianji Tower's camp. While chatting with Xiaolonjun and the others, Night Sorrow heard Yin Shi cursing in the space-time pagoda. He then closed his soul power, not letting Yin Shi listen to his conversation with Xiaolonjun and the others. After chatting for a while, Night Sorrow went to the place where he originally camped and set up a tent. Then, he flashed into the space-time pagoda. I've always kept my soul power and my soul power open so that you can feel the situation outside. I'm afraid that you will feel suffocated here, but you will shout and scream. If you do this again, I won't let you know the situation outside anymore. Night Sorrow looked at Yin Shi and said, Don't. This is my fault. I saw that Xiaolonjun was too angry, so I couldn't suppress my anger. Seeing that Night Sorrow was angry, Yin Shi became obedient. Be careful in the future. I can accommodate you for some things, but there is a bottom line. You can't force me to use my soul power to restrain you. I know. Yin Shi nodded. She really didn't want to bear the torture of her soul now. That 7-star saint is a 5-star saint. Can you kill him? Or a sneak attack? Night Sorrow asked. I can if I recover to the level of an intermediate saint. However, the prerequisite is that I have to cultivate the Wind Yuan body and the Wind Yuan escape. Yin Shi whispered. Isn't the Wind Yuan escape an innate skill for escaping? Night Sorrow frowned. The wind yuan escape is an innate skill for escaping, but it also has an auxiliary movement technique, the wind yuan flash. It used to be useless because I couldn't use it to fight. However, if I cultivate the wind yuan body, there won't be any drawbacks. The wind yuan flash won't be a technique that hurts the body. Inshi said. In the end, you still want essence. Here you go. Night Sorrow pushed Inshi onto the big pink bed. After fighting for a while, Night Sorrow took a deep breath. I'll give you what you want. However, when I want to kill the 7-star saint, if you can't do it, it's meaningless for me to keep you alive. I won't kill you. I'll just throw you into the first level of the space-time pagoda and let you perish on your own. I'll work hard to cultivate. It's my fault today. I won't bare my fangs and brandish my claws in the future. She pulled her skirt over her body and said. She knew that Night Sorrow was still angry at her for cursing Xiaofan Jun today. During this period of time, I admit that I've treated you well. I didn't abuse you or bully you. However, this isn't the right for you to be unreasonable with me. Night Sorrow said. She nodded and didn't say anything. She could tell that Night Sorrow was really angry. Chapter 754. Genius 1 second. Remember Love Go/Little? I'll provide you with interesting novels to read. If you can keep giving me essence energy, half a month. Half a month will do, Inshi said. Alright, just shout if you need it during this time. Night Sorrow took out the Sun Dragon wine and drank a mouthful before leaving the space-time pagoda. He walked out of the tent and flew towards the realm sea. He wanted to see the situation of the spatial soul-devouring beasts in the spatial turbulence. About 20 miles into the realm sea, Night Sorrow arrived at the edge of the spatial storm. At this time, Night Sorrow saw the spatial soul-devouring beasts shuttling through the spatial turbulence. Chapter LQ, Section M of the W version. After thinking for a moment, Night Sorrow decided to give it a try. He wanted to see if his protective barrier could block the attacks of the spatial soul-devouring beasts. After taking a deep breath, Night Sorrow activated the protective barrier of a peak 3rd grade venerable and entered the spatial turbulence. He then stopped. At this time, the 2 spatial soul-devouring beasts charged towards Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow stood there and allowed the spatial soul-devouring beasts to crash into his protective barrier. As the spatial soul-devouring beasts crashed, Night Sorrow's protective barrier caved in. However, it did not break. The 2 spatial soul-devouring beasts continued to crash into it. The spatial attribute is still incomparable to the sovereign attribute, Night Sorrow muttered softly and felt a little more at ease. After enduring for a while and confirming that the protective barrier could withstand the spatial soul-devouring beasts, Night Sorrow wanted to see if his body, which had been greatly enhanced by the power of desolates, could withstand the attacks of the spatial soul-devouring beasts. After removing the protective barrier, Night Sorrow circulated the power of the myriad Dao Tome to protect himself. Whoosh! Whoosh! The spatial soul-devouring beasts tore apart Night Sorrow's robes and crashed into his body. They wanted to drill into Night Sorrow's body and enter the divine sea. But in reality, the soul-devouring beast was only able to break through Night Sorrow's robes. It was unable to break through the defense of Night Sorrow's body. Night Sorrow waved his hand and punched out with the power of the myriad Tao Tome. A spatial soul-devouring beast was sent flying by Night Sorrow's punch. Night Sorrow's fist, imbued with the power of desolates, sent the spatial soul-eating beast flying into the realm sea. Soon after, Night Sorrow held the reincarnation spear and compressed the true chi of nothingness. Then he attacked with the spear. When Night Sorrow's true energy converged into a single point, the soul-eater beast couldn't hold on any longer. Its body was obliterated, and the 2 halves of its body fell into the realm sea. After that, Night Sorrow began to cultivate in the spatial turbulence of the realm sea and began to fight the spatial soul-devouring beast. After increasing his cultivation, Night Sorrow's nothingness attribute was much more condensed than before. His protective barrier could withstand the attacks of the soul-devouring beast, so he had nothing to worry about. This was the importance of increasing one's cultivation. The difference between a level 2 venerable and a level 3 venerable was only 1 level, but their strength was completely different. Night Sorrow also tried to change the way he attacked with the spear. When he attacked with the 7-star glorious moon spear, the energy was used on a single point. If he wanted to break through the enemy, he would use the extreme melting. After fighting for 2 hours, Night Sorrow returned to the space-time treasure pagoda and drank a mouthful of Dragon Sun wine. You're almost done refining just now, right? Let's continue. Night Sorrow beckoned Shi. It's only been 2 hours. Can you do it? Although I'm anxious, I can't hurt your body, Shi said. It doesn't matter. I'm indeed anxious. After our Night Moon Dynasty returns, we'll counterattack. The 7-star dynasty has a 5-star saint. This is an unavoidable obstacle, Night Sorrow said. I'll do my best, Shi said. Love, go little say Chew, come on. My body is strong, and I've also drunk some Dragon Sun wine. I should be able to do it. Night Sorrow nodded at Shi. Then, Shi took off her skirt and went to the big pink bed. Night Sorrow went to the side of the big pink bed and saw Shi pull one of her legs to the side of the bed and attack directly. This time, Night Sorrow wanted to deal with it, but in fact, he still fought for a long time. After that, Night Sorrow drank 2 more mouthfuls of Dragon Sun wine and meditated to recover. Not only could the Dragon Sun wine replenish Yang Qi, but it also had the effect of shaking the wind. It was also a treasure wine that strengthened the body. After recovering for 2 hours, Night Sorrow entered the spatial turbulence of the Realm Sea and fought with the spatial Soul Eater beast. At this time, Night Sorrow was cultivating in all aspects. Movement technique, spear art, true qi, myriad Dao tome energy, soul energy, and true qi were almost depleted. Night Sorrow used his innate energy to protect himself. Using his innate energy, the spatial attribute, to protect himself, Night Sorrow could only withstand the attacks of the spatial turbulence. He couldn't withstand the attacks of the spatial Soul Eater beast because their attributes were of the same origin. However, Night Sorrow wasn't worried. Even if the spatial Soul Eater beast broke through the protective energy, he still had the myriad Dao tomes energy to protect himself. After exhausting most of his true qi, Night Sorrow returned to the space-time treasure pagoda. How's your refining? Night Sorrow looked at Shi and asked. I've finished refining, but you can't do this. Wait a little longer and we'll do it again. I can't hurt your body, Shi said. Okay, then continue cultivating. We'll talk about it later. Night Sorrow drank the Sun Dragon wine again and started cultivating. He was really going all out now. Not only did he want to cultivate well, but he also wanted to support Shi. Shi could tell that Night Sorrow had been cultivating like crazy ever since he heard that the Night Moon Dynasty was coming back and that there was a saint in the 7 Stars Dynasty. After resting, Night Sorrow continued to cultivate in the spatial turbulence of the Realm Sea. All-round cultivation and improvement were what Night Sorrow wanted the most. Who knew how many Soul Eater beasts had been killed by Night Sorrow, but there were simply too many of them. Night Sorrow just had to travel back and forth in one area to fight, so he didn't have to worry about not having a target to fight. As the battle went on, Night Sorrow's spear art became sharper and sharper. Every spear attack was compressed to the extreme. In other words, he displayed the dominance of the Void attribute as the supreme attribute. Night Sorrow returned to the Pagoda of Time when he was almost exhausted. After drinking a mouthful of Sun Dragon wine, Night Sorrow waved at Shi. You have to pay attention to yourself, Shi said as she took off her skirt. It's okay. I want to relax now. Night Sorrow shook his head at Shi. After giving Shi his essence chi, Night Sorrow began to meditate and recover. Shi also began to cultivate. With the help of Night Sorrow's essence chi, Shi's wind origin body had improved greatly. Night Sorrow continued to cultivate. Fortunately, Shi had a bottom line. She controlled the pace of some things and only needed Night Sorrow once or twice a day. Half a month later, Yi Shang's cultivation was extremely solid, and Shi's cultivation had reached the level of entering the Saint Realm again. Chapter 755. Genius 1 second. Remember love divided by go divided by little? I will provide you with wonderful novels to read. Okay, let's go somewhere else. I hope you can succeed, Night Sorrow said to Shi. If I can cultivate the body of wind, I can also help you with your cultivation. Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said. You should enter the Sage Realm first. Night Sorrow said. Then Night Sorrow left the island and went to a mountain in the Haohai City area. Night Sorrow felt that it was very quiet here and no one would disturb him. So he let Shi out. Night Sorrow thought for a while and gave Shi half a bottle of spiritual fluid of life and spiritual fluid of origin. He also told her how to use them. More. New. Fastest. On $X. You really care about people. Maybe this is the reason why your 3 fiancés are so loyal to you. Shi took the spiritual fluid of life and spiritual fluid of origin and said. Night Sorrow didn't say anything and just smiled. She sat down cross-legged and started to advance. In the beginning, it was very stable, but as her aura climbed, 2 types of energy appeared on her body. Her body would sometimes be filled with green energy, and sometimes it would be filled with blue energy. Sorrow knew that this was a transition between 2 extreme forms of energy. Love, go little, say W, chew 4 hours later, Shi's aura changed. The power of rules appeared on her body. At the same time, the energy on her body also changed dramatically. There was blue in green and green in blue. Then, it integrated into Shi's body. Shang felt that Shi had changed. Her silver hair, which was originally very bright, had a luster flowing through it like water ripples. At this time, a tribulation cloud appeared in the sky and rolled above Shi's head. Shi swung her hands in front of her chest and abdomen. Then, she stood up and took out a long sword with her right hand. When Shi was ready, the thunder and lightning struck down. Night Sorrow found that the lightning was much stronger than the lightning that appeared when he was advancing. They were not on the same level, but he could understand. After all, one was a venerable level thunder tribulation, and the other was a saint level thunder tribulation. They were not on the same level at all. While Night Sorrow was pondering, the thunder tribulation descended. At this moment, Night Sorrow witnessed the speed of Shi, who had cultivated the wind essence body. When she dodged and retreated, Night Sorrow could barely see her figure clearly. He could only see the sword chi slashing towards the thunder tribulation. The lightning was strong, but Shi's speed was fast. When she was dodging, she quickly attacked with her sword. With dozens of rapid strikes, the lightning was neutralized. Love, go little, say, ku. After the lightning disappeared, the tribulation clouds in the sky also disappeared. It was just a bolt of tribulation lightning. However, after the thunder tribulation, there was no colorful light. Only a ball of light fell on Shi's body. Then, Shi began to meditate and cultivate. Night Sorrow took out a jar of Longyang wine, poured a bowl, and drank slowly. During this period of time, he had been suppressed by Shi. If it was an ordinary person, he would not be able to withstand it. However, Night Sorrow also found a benefit. After drinking the Longyang wine, the excess yang qi was suppressed by Shi, and the remaining energy was used to strengthen his body. 2 hours later, Shi stood up. It's done. My current speed is not far from when I was at my peak. When my cultivation recovers a little, even if I meet Xiaofan Jun, I won't be defeated. Shi, Senior Sierra is still good to me. Don't be hostile to her in the future, okay? What you have done is in the past. Look at the future. Let go of your hatred and you will live a better life. Night Sorrow said. I won't talk about this in the future. I also hope that you won't embarrass me in front of her. This is the last thing I want to accept. Consider it my request. Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said, if there is a need to meet, I will say that you are my friend. I will say that after I was kidnapped by you, we became friends. Night Sorrow thought for a moment and said. Shi did not speak. She only bowed to Night Sorrow. There are some things that I can and will hide. However, I will not lie to my Aunt Faye and my fiancé. I will not lie to the people around me. However, I will tell them about the situation between us. I believe that they will not look down on you. Night Sorrow said. Shi nodded. She also knew that this was Night Sorrow's bottom line. Okay, the rest is for you to slowly recover. I will continue to improve my cultivation. Night Sorrow said. At this time, Night Sorrow's cultivation had reached a bottleneck. However, he did not want to break through now. He was now a peak level 3 venerable. If he broke through again, he would become a mid-level venerable. Therefore, he planned to consolidate his cultivation at this stage. In addition, he wanted to let the myriad Tao treasured tome catch up and reach the same level. Do you still want to go to the realm C to cultivate? Shi looked at Night Sorrow and asked. Night Sorrow thought for a moment and said, yes. Actually, You can also go there to consolidate your cultivation. If you are afraid of being seen by the saints of Tianji Tower, we can go to another island. Shi nodded. She also felt that this was a good idea. After night, Sorrow went back to bid farewell to Xiaolonjun and the others. He went to the island where Shi used to live. Night Sorrow and Shi entered the spatial turbulence in the realm sea to cultivate every day. Shi cultivated the wind origin body, which was equivalent to combining the elements of wind and water. Her attack power was strong. Coupled with the power of rules, she could kill the spatial soul-eater beast. However, the spatial storm did not train her at all. It only helped her consolidate her cultivation. This situation also made Night Sorrow understand why no saints entered the spatial turbulence in the realm sea to cultivate. Shi's situation was special. She was not training her cultivation but consolidating it. The effect was still very obvious. Night Sorrow also planned to level up the Myriad Tao treasured tome. Only by leveling up could he use the Desolate Stone to continue improving his attributes. He could not use the Desolate Stone now because his cultivation had reached a critical point. Before he was about to break through, Night Sorrow looked at Shi. I know what you are going to say. Don't stay too far away from you. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Actually, I also want to go into seclusion. Let's enter the space-time pagoda together. Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said, since we are both going into seclusion, let's enter the space-time pagoda. At least it will be safe. Night Sorrow nodded and then entered the space-time pagoda with Shi. After entering the space-time pagoda, Shi made a pot of tea. After drinking the tea, Night Sorrow went to the spiritual jade stone stool to cultivate. Shi also sat on the futon to cultivate. With the dragon spirit pill that Night Sorrow had given her, her cultivation had skyrocketed. Now, she was charging towards becoming a 2-star saint. In the past, Shi had been able to cultivate to the level of a 7-star saint. She was not a brainless person. She knew that Yi Shang's luck was shocking and that he was also her nemesis. At the same time, he could also help her grow. However, there was one thing that she could not go against Yi Shang's wishes. Shi also realized that Night Sorrow did not force her to do anything. Therefore she felt at ease. Shi also knew that she had borrowed Night Sorrow's luck. It was as if the problem of her body that had not been solved for many years had been solved easily. Although the solution was a little unorthodox. Chapter 756. Genius Remembers Love in 1 second/small? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Night Sorrow had a good foundation in the Myriad Tao tome, so it was not difficult for him to cultivate and level up. During cultivation, Night Sorrow's body would provide him with energy to strengthen his soul. Then, he would use his soul power and absorbed energy to strengthen his body and the energy in his body. As long as Night Sorrow did not suppress his level up, he could level up while cultivating the Myriad Tao tome. He had been suppressing it because he did not want his foundation to be unstable. As time passed, Night Sorrow's cultivation of the Myriad Tao tome increased sharply. With a roar in his body, the energy in the Myriad Tao tome surged and broke through the bottleneck of the second level of the Myriad Tao tome and entered the third level of the Myriad Tao tome. Then, it began to circulate naturally. Success! Night Sorrow's breakthrough ended perfectly. The energy in his body and the strength of his body increased again. Night Sorrow did not get up and continued to stabilize his cultivation. While stabilizing his cultivation, Night Sorrow also started cultivating his soul power and bloodline talent. As for the cultivation of his chi, Night Sorrow did not intend to level up. He wanted to suppress his cultivation and continue to stabilize it. Night Sorrow used 3 days to stabilize his cultivation. When Night Sorrow opened his eyes and stood up, Shi was making tea and tasting it. Let's go out and cultivate. After drinking a cup of tea and nodding to Shi, Night Sorrow wrapped Shi with his soul power and left the space-time treasure pagoda. Then they entered the space turbulence in the realm sea to fight with the space turbulence storm and the space soul-eating beast. Watching Night Sorrow cultivate, Shi also entered the space turbulence. She had just become a 2-star saint and needed to stabilize her cultivation. Actual combat was the best way to do so. After cultivating for 4 hours, Night Sorrow returned to the edge of the island. He took out the Longyang wine. After thinking for a while, Night Sorrow changed to ordinary wine and drank 2 mouthfuls. At this moment, Shi also came back. The blood chi in your body has increased again. Your body refining technique is indeed powerful. I already said that it doesn't suit you. If it suits you, you can have it. Knight's Sorrow glanced at Shi and said, I'm just lamenting. I don't want it. Shi explained. She didn't want Knight's Sorrow to have any misunderstandings because it wouldn't do her any good. In addition, she also understood that if it was suitable for her, Knight's Sorrow would give it to her because she was under Knight's Sorrow's control. After recovering for a while, Knight's Sorrow continued to cultivate in the realm C. At this time, the soul-devouring beast in the chaotic streams of space had less and less influence on him. Some time ago, when Knight's Sorrow entered the chaotic streams of space, the soul-devouring beast broke through his protective shield and crashed into him. He still felt a lot of pain. Now, he only felt a little numb. This was the effect of the myriad Tao tomes strengthening his body and increasing his energy. Every time Knight's Sorrow entered the realm C, he only wore battle pants because even if he wore an outer robe, it couldn't withstand the soul-devouring beast's damage. In addition, the soul-devouring beast only attacked Knight's Sorrow's chest and neck. As for Shi, she didn't want the soul-devouring beast to touch her body like a loach. However, she could rely on her dodging and attacking speed to avoid the soul-devouring beast's attacks. At the same time, she could send the soul-devouring beast flying and kill it. After cultivating for another 6 or 7 days, Knight's Sorrow decided to go back to the original camping area because he was afraid that if something happened, no one would be able to find him. Knight's Sorrow, if your protective energy is stronger, you can wrap me up and I'll take you. We'll have a chance to enter Clear Sky City. Shi looked at Clear Sky City in the Realm C and said, That's a good idea, but we don't know if the spatial storm only envelopes the periphery of Clear Sky City or if the inside of Clear Sky City is also filled with chaotic streams of space. If the inside of Clear Sky City has chaotic streams of space like the outside, or even more violent, then it's useless for us to enter. We can't even investigate. Knight's Sorrow thought for a moment and shook his head at Shi. Then, he enveloped Shi with his soul power and brought her back to the pagoda of time and space. Then, they returned to the place where Wuxia and the others were staying. Knight's Sorrow and Shi had different thoughts. Shi didn't care about the outside world and only pursued self-improvement. However, Knight's Sorrow was different. He had worries and things to deal with. This was the difference between interpersonal relationships and social relationships. Then, Knight's Sorrow went to greet Xiaofan and the others. When Xiaofan saw Knight's Sorrow, she criticized Knight's Sorrow. She was worried that Knight's Sorrow would be intercepted by Shi and the enemy forces if he ran around like this. The Extreme Heaven Tower had destroyed the Tianfeng dynasty, the Silver Demon Villa, and even the Western Green sect had been crippled. However, there were too many factions that were hostile to the Night Moon dynasty. Not to mention others, just the few great dynasties wanted to strangle Yi Shang to death. The few dynasties could still afford to lose a high-level venerable. It was also possible that there would be more assassinations. In addition, there were many people in the 9 realms and 18 states who were hostile to the Empyrean Terminus Tower. They were unwilling to see the Empyrean Terminus Tower grow stronger in the future. It was normal for them to target Yi Shang. Knight's Sorrow accepted Xiaofan's criticism with a smile. He knew that whoever wanted to kill him or assassinate him would be unlucky. The other party wouldn't directly send a saint to kill him, right? With a superfighter like Shi, wouldn't anyone below the Saint Realm die? After chatting with Xiaofan for a while, Knight's Sorrow went to visit Long Xianxing. Hee. This body of yours is very tyrannical. I reckon that even the Fist Emperor Li Feng of the ancient times was at this level. Long Xianxing glanced at Yi Shang and said. Knight's Sorrow had heard of the name Li Feng. He was an expert in the ancient times. His body was his weapon, and his strength was incomparable. Then, Long Xianxing asked Knight's Sorrow if he still needed the Xian Turtle Crystal and the Blood Spirit Turtle Crystal. If he needed, he could help Knight's Sorrow. Knight's Sorrow thanked Long Xianxing for his kindness. He had enough resources now. The Blood Spirit Turtle Crystal that Long Xianxing gave him last time could definitely support him to cultivate the myriad Tao tome to the Saint Realm, which was the Golden Body Realm. However, Knight's Sorrow also asked if there were any resources that were of a higher level than the Blood Spirit Turtle Crystal. Long Xianxing thought for a while. There are some. For example, the blood essence of high-level monsters or the blood essence condensed into blood crystals after death. They all have the effect of strengthening the body. In the Ice Plain Sea, There is a monster called the blood spirit Zhao. In the desolate sea, there is a monster called the four-clawed silver dragon. They can produce high-level energy to strengthen the body. Thank you, Senior. Night Sorrow bowed to Long Xianxing. That's nothing. I walk the path of inaction. That's why I don't kill. Your path is different from mine. To go against the heavens and fight for supremacy, that is to kill your way out. Go ahead and do it. Long Xianxing said. Night Sorrow then bade farewell to Long Xianxing. Night Sorrow had a lot of life spirit liquid, but he didn't want to use it unless it was a critical moment. He just kept it as a backup. LT+Y version $1 post. Chapter 757. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Where? Night Sorrow asked. Baidu search AI Go female sign Xiao, say www.aichuxs.com. There are four-clawed silver dragons in the wilderness behind the Silver Demon Villa. They should be a clan, Inshi said. Long Xianxing said that we don't need to go on the same path, but I don't want to kill for no reason. We'll see when the time comes. Night Sorrow said. Night Sorrow took Inshi back to Sky City. He could still cultivate in the Realm Sea, but he didn't want Sikong Chuyu, Yang Lei, and Aoi to worry. He was also afraid that Wu Lingfei wouldn't be able to see him. After returning to Sky City, Night Sorrow went to the training field first. At the practice ground, Night Sorrow saw the members of the God-slaying team working hard to cultivate. At this moment, the God-slaying squad already had 4 supremacies. Apart from Night Sorrow, Yun Huang, and Ling Long, Liang Yu had also reached the supremacy realm. Baidu search AI Go female sign Xiao, say www.aichuxs.com. Other than that, there were also a large number of late Void Inquiry stage team members. Yang Lei and Sikong Chuyu had both taken the extreme Void pill some time ago. After stabilizing their cultivation bases, they had already advanced to the 8th level of the Void Inquiry stage. Even though Xueling, Hou Jian, Lei Bao, Nan Liue and Lei Zhang were slightly weaker, they were still at the 7th Void Inquiry stage. The others were also at the mid-Void Inquiry stage. Only a few of them were at the early Void Inquiry stage. As for those who had yet to attain the Void Inquiry stage, only Ma Shizhuang, Tang Tian and Chu Ning had managed to do so. This was not because of their innate talent and hard work. Instead, it was because they had only cultivated for a short period of time. Aoi had also advanced to the 4th level of the Void Inquiry stage. With the help of the Great Void Pill, she easily reached the mid-Void Inquiry stage after stabilizing her cultivation base at the 3rd level of the Void Inquiry stage. After chatting with everyone for a while, Night Sorrow returned to his residence. He had some matters to discuss with Wu Lingfei. Forever free of SVs equals look at. A small D say *G. While Night Sorrow was drinking tea in his mansion, Wu Lingfei came and sat across from Night Sorrow. You've made good progress, but you still need to rest. Wu Lingfei said to Night Sorrow. It's the same for Auntie Fei. Don't work too hard. Right now, the Eastern Xian region is as stable as Mount Tai. With Senior Long Xianxing around, we will be able to withstand any storm. Night Sorrow said. Wu Lingfei smiled at Night Sorrow. It had been many years since someone cared for her, and she enjoyed it. Yi Shang then asked if there was a way to inform him immediately if he was away for a while and something happened here. Following this, Wu Ling concubine told Night Sorrow that he could just make a communication crystal. As long as his spirit power entered a liquid state, he would be able to do this. After explaining, Wu Lingfei looked at Yi Shang. You're going out? Where are you going? Auntie Fei, I plan to go to the Supreme River Space again. Last time, I didn't investigate it carefully enough. As an ancient battlefield, that place shouldn't be simple. Love, go little, say, Night Sorrow said. But it's still very dangerous for you to go there. Wu Lingfei thought for a while and said, Auntie Fei, I actually have a hunch that the Netherworld world will declare war on the 9 regions sooner or later. Since there aren't many intelligent Netherworld beasts in the Supreme River Space, I'll try to go there again before they completely occupy it and investigate it. There were many saints in the ancient times. If one of them died and left a sacred treasure there, it would be best if we can get it. Night Sorrow told her his thoughts. Wu Lingfei thought for a while and nodded. You have the time and space pagoda. In terms of safety, unless you encounter a saint, there shouldn't be a problem. Go there. Don't fight. Just look for opportunities. Even though she was worried, she did not stop him. In the past, Night Sorrow, who was at the Void Inquiry stage, managed to come back alive from the Supreme River space. Now, Night Sorrow was at the peak of the 3rd level of the Venerable Realm. His body cultivation had also improved greatly. His strength was also on a completely different level from before. As for whether he could enter the Supreme River space, Wu Lingfei did not need to ask because Night Sorrow's attribute allowed him to ignore the suppression of other spaces. Next, under Wu Lingfei's guidance, Night Sorrow made 3 messaging crystals. He gave one to Wu Lingfei, one to Yonglei, and the others and the last one to Yiling Lan. Looking at Night Sorrow, Wu Lingfei felt a little reluctant. You can use the Golden Phoenix flexible armor as you wish. It won't affect me at all. Don't worry about me, Auntie Fei. I'll rest for 2 days before leaving. You don't have to cultivate during these 2 days. You can also relax for 2 days. Night Sorrow said with a smile. In the next 2 days, Night Sorrow had a good rest. After knowing Night Sorrow's decision, the Sikong Chuyu trio did not object. They just reminded Night Sorrow to be careful. Night Sorrow also gave the messaging crystal to Aoi. Among the 3 women, Aoi was the calmest. After resting for 2 days, it was time to leave. Night Sorrow gave the last messaging crystal to Yiling Lan. Night Sorrow left Little Kong to cultivate by the lake. This time, he had to endure the pressure, and it was inconvenient for Tianyu, who had entered the Sovereign Realm. Although Tianyu wanted to follow Night Sorrow, he still listened to Night Sorrow's decision. Then, the group sent Night Sorrow to the teleportation array. Night Sorrow, be careful when you enter. If there's a problem with the seal, fix it. Wu Lingfei said. She did not want the nether beasts to rush out and cause trouble. Then, Night Sorrow sat on the teleportation array and left the city in the sky. This Golden Phoenix really cares about you, she said to Night Sorrow. Of course, Auntie Fei has always treated me like family. Night Sorrow and she communicated. With the teleportation array, Night Sorrow did not need to spend much effort on his journey. He went straight to the Medicine Valley. After thinking about it, Night Sorrow did not want the people of Medicine Valley to worry about him. He flew directly to the cliff where the space of Supreme River was. Then, Night Sorrow sent Shi out of the Pagoda of Time and Space. He knew that it was the same whether Shi was in the Pagoda of Time and Space because the laws of the world and space would detect it. Just like when he went to the Void Dimension, no one was allowed to bring flying mounts above the 4th level. This is the Medicine Valley, where the entrance to Supreme River is, Night Sorrow said. Golden Phoenix has a great temperament. With Dongxuan's origin in her body, her future achievements will surpass Xiaolon Jun and the others. Shi's mind was still filled with Wu Lingfei, so she did not pay much attention to Night Sorrow's words. The laws of this space are very complete. I don't know if it will work if I bring you in, Night Sorrow said. Wu Lingfei had tested its strength the last time and knew that the spatial passage of Supreme River was very suppressive. This was also the reason why she did not follow Night Sorrow into the Death Dimension when Night Sorrow brought her into the Death Dimension. Now, it was also because Night Sorrow's cultivation base had improved tremendously that he dared to bring Shi along. Then, both of them began to fly downwards. Night Sorrow and Shi were extremely fast and soon reached the bottom of the cliff. Come here. I hope my protective shield can melt the seal and let the energy enter directly. If the seal is broken, I will have to repair it, Night Sorrow said to Shi. Shi nodded and stood beside Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow took a deep breath and propped up his protective shield before walking towards the spatial passage. The seal's energy blocked Night Sorrow's advance. However, Night Sorrow then performed a spatial rend and cut open the seal's energy without destroying the seal's foundation. He then charged forward and brought Shi through the seal to the entrance of the spatial passage. Night Moon's spatial rend is indeed powerful, Shi, who was holding Night Sorrow's left arm, said emotionally. Chapter 758. Genius remembers love in 1 second / small? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Okay, my speed is not something an ordinary saint can contend with. If we can't handle it, we'll run first. There's no need to retreat, Shi said. What saint? Nothing much and you're planning to run. Night Sorrow looked at Shi with disdain. So what if I'm a saint? If I can't win, I'll run. Am I waiting for death? Saints are also cultivators. Their battle analysis and handling are no different from ordinary cultivators. Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said, Come closer to me. This way, my protective shield can be compressed and more condensed, Night Sorrow said to Shi. Shi did not stand on ceremony. She directly leaned in front of Night Sorrow and hugged Night Sorrow's waist with both hands. Night Sorrow compressed his protective shield and then cut forward. As Night Sorrow's protective shield was cut, his body began to move forward. The energy in the spatial passage pressed down on Night Sorrow, causing his protective shield to shake a little. Shi also focused and was ready to attack at any time. Firstly, it was to fight outside. Secondly, if Night Sorrow could not withstand it, she would use the power of law to protect the two of them. Even if they entered the spatial turbulence, they would not be crushed by the pressure in the spatial passage. In 2 breaths of time, Night Sorrow rushed out of the spatial passage. Once out of the spatial passage, Night Sorrow began to cut left and right to dodge. There are no saint-level nether beasts here. Protect yourself and let me kill them. Shi checked and said to Night Sorrow. Then, Night Sorrow withdrew his protective shield and let Shi out. Shi could also rush out, but breaking through Night Sorrow's protective shield would consume a lot of Night Sorrow's vital energy. Shi rushed out and began to kill the nether beasts. Without saint-level nether beasts, there was no pressure on her. It was a complete one-sided slaughter. Night Sorrow also joined the battle. Nether beasts that were not at the late stage of the Venerable Realm were no threat to him. The battle ended in 15 minutes. Almost none of the nether beasts managed to escape. They were all killed by Shi and Night Sorrow. Collect the crystal cores. These are the pinnacle of the death attribute, nether energy crystal cores. They're quite valuable. Love, go little, say, Night Sorrow said to Shi, and the two of them began to collect the crystal nuclei. After cleaning up the battlefield, Night Sorrow took out a jar of wine and threw it to Shi. Then, he opened another jar for himself. Shi only drank a little and then put it away. Night Sorrow said after drinking a few mouthfuls of wine, Last time, I was only scouting in secret. My main goal was to find the spatial passageway. This time, the two of us will search in detail. It's impossible that no experts have fallen in the primordial battlefield. If we're lucky, we might be able to find something. Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said, This depends on luck and opportunity. If there's a holy treasure longsword, can you give it to me? Night Sorrow asked, What's the level of the weapon you're using now? Is it not a holy treasure? Shi's explanation gave Night Sorrow some information. The holy treasures of the 9 Zones world were extremely rare now. Even if there were, they had to be nurtured by themselves. Most of the saints also used spirit weapons. However, because of the protection of the power of rules, the spirit weapons would not break. Xiaolonjuan's combat strength was strong because her weapon was a half-step holy treasure. It was between a supreme-grade spirit weapon and a holy treasure. Night Sorrow understood that it was indeed very difficult for a holy treasure to appear. It was very difficult to nurture it. It had a lot to do with the attribute compatibility, and so on. After resting for a while, Night Sorrow and Shi began to move forward. This time, it was different from the last time Night Sorrow had come in alone. Last time, Night Sorrow had avoided the nether beasts. This time, he specifically chased after the nether beasts and killed them. Let's see how lucky I am this time. If I can get a saint-tier weapon that is compatible with your attributes, I can give it to you. But if it's not compatible with your attributes, don't even think about it. I still have 3 fiancés and my Aunt Fei, Yishan said. Okay, you can arrange it as you see fit, Shi said. Then, the two continued to move forward, killing as they moved forward. Night Sorrow felt that the 9 Zones world and the Netherworld would fight sooner or later. The Supreme River Space and the Netherworld had the same attribute. Therefore, killing the nether beasts here was equivalent to reducing the strength of the Netherworld in advance. Love, go little, say, Chu Shi agreed with Night Sorrow's opinion. Even if she did not agree, she had to agree with Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow's opinion also made Shi understand that Night Sorrow was a big-hearted person. He did not have any selfish thoughts. This was because most people who came in here wanted to benefit themselves. When the two were tired, They would rest in the space-time pagoda. Seeing that Night Sorrow had to work hard to cultivate for a while every time he recovered, Inshi was very impressed. She knew that at Night Sorrow's age, it was very rare to have such a temperament. After another round of cultivation, Yi Shang stood up and stretched his arms. The bones in his body emitted crackling sounds. You don't have to work so hard, right? You have no opponents in the Nine Zones world, Inshi said to Night Sorrow as she looked at him. This time, we will stop for a few days. I will refine the Desolate Stone. Night Sorrow planned to cultivate his attributes to saturation. When the power of Desolates was saturated, he could use the power of Desolates to strengthen his body again. He believed that at that time, his body tempering cultivation would far surpass Huang Wudao's Desolate Sword physique. Inshi asked when she saw Yi Shang take out a Desolate Stone that was larger and of higher quality than the one she had given him. Night Sorrow sighed and told her about the Golden Growler's corpse. He also told her about the Golden Growler's indestructible soul. If the body is indestructible, the soul is indestructible. This is beyond the limit of lifespan. For a corpse from 10,000 years ago to have such a situation, the situation is indeed complicated. After hearing Night Sorrow's words, Inshi's expression changed. This matter was beyond her imagination. Ignoring the astonished Inshi, Night Sorrow began to meditate and cultivate. He knew that there were some things that Inshi needed time to digest. After sorting out his emotions, he looked at Night Sorrow who was cultivating. Inshi had eaten the dragon spirit pill and was also cultivating. She was also anxious to recover her strength because this was a chaotic world. YC.Q original chapter * on WN. This time, Night Sorrow went into seclusion for half a month and only managed to refine half of the Desolate Stone. Night Sorrow did not continue refining because the power of Desolates in the Desolate Stone was very rich. Furthermore, the Desolate Stone contained pure energy. If he continued to refine it, his foundation would be unstable. Night Sorrow stopped cultivating. Inshi, who was meditating, also stood up and went to make tea. You've been cultivating for half a month. You're too persistent. Inshi said. Our foundation is a bit unstable. Let's continue fighting later and settle down, Night Sorrow said. Whether our foundation is stable or not is very important. Shall we continue? Inshi asked. She also needed to use battles to increase her cultivation. Inshi was also under pressure because when Night Moon returned from the dynasty, she had to defeat the 7-star saint. The 7-star saint was a 5-star saint, so she had to work hard to recover. Chapter 759. Genius 1 second. Remember love divided by go divided by little? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. You're right. There's one more thing. I've successfully condensed the wind essence body and it contains a lot of yang energy. It can also help you with your cultivation, Inshi said. Okay, let's talk about this later. Night Sorrow's soul power wrapped around Inshi and they left the time-space pagoda. Now, the two of them were not worried about encountering opponents that they could not contend against. Night Sorrow had a holy treasure in his hand and Inshi had the cultivation of a saint. Her speed was also extremely fast. In Inshi's words, even if she could not win, she could still run away. She did not harm herself by using the wind essence escape technique. Without any worries, Night Sorrow and Inshi had nothing to be afraid of. They just charged forward. Night Sorrow used the two weapons alternately. The battle intensity was not high. He used the space-splitting spear to increase his compatibility. When the battle was intense, he used the reincarnation spear. Seeing Night Sorrow doing this, Inshi, who was puzzled, asked Night Sorrow why he did this. She thought about what Night Sorrow told her about cultivating the soul doppelganger. You've already reached this step. You're indeed powerful. I've thought about cultivating the soul doppelganger in the past, but I don't have a top-notch medium. It's too late to cultivate it now. Love, go little say, Inshi said. Night Sorrow thought for a moment and did not mention that he still had the Phantom Dao Stone. This was because Inshi was not suitable to cultivate the soul doppelganger now. He could not lose his strength. The 7-star saint was still waiting to be dealt with. During the day they would advance and kill. At night, the two of them would kill ordinary small demonic beasts and drink some wine. Then, they would enter the time-space pagoda to rest and cultivate. After a few days, Knight Sorrow collected a lot of alchemy materials and ores. However, he still did not find any traces of an expert's battle. Knight Sorrow was not discouraged. He believed that he would gain something. It was impossible that there were no remnants in an ancient battlefield. She admired Knight Sorrow's steadiness, because even if he didn't discover it, Knight Sorrow was not anxious at all. After setting up camp once more, Knight Sorrow intended to charge into the 4th rank of the Exalt realm. He'd been forcefully suppressing it during this period of time, and he felt that there weren't any problems with the condensation and control of his true energy. After taking a look at Shi, Knight Sorrow greeted Xiaofan and told Shi that he was going into seclusion. Although he was in the same level as Shi in the spatial treasure pagoda, Knight Sorrow was not worried about his safety. First of all, Shi would not dare to attack him. As long as the soul energy he left in the silver she divine pearl exploded, Shi would die. Other than this factor, Knight Sorrow still had Xiaofan as insurance. As long as she made any strange movements, Xiaofan would bring her to another level. Within the space-time treasure pagoda, Xiaofan was the master. After spending a day and a night, Knight Sorrow raised his true energy to the 4th rank of the Exalt realm. His true energy had become much more vigorous. This was a small leap from the beginner Exalt realm to the intermediate Exalt realm. Knight Sorrow opened his eyes and took a look at Shi. He then continued to meditate and stabilize his cultivation. After stabilizing his cultivation for 6 hours, Knight Sorrow stood up and said, "Make a pot of tea." Okay. You're probably the only one in the 9 regions and 18 prefectures to use a saint as a maid. Shi muttered and began to make tea. You're also the only one in the 9 regions and 18 prefectures to kidnap a venerable. By the way, why didn't you make a move when I was in seclusion? Knight Sorrow asked. Was there a need? If you died, I wouldn't be able to live either, right? I believe that you would have a backup plan. Moreover, you're pretty good to me. Shi said. Knight Sorrow smiled and sat down at the tea table to drink tea. He was very satisfied with Shi's attitude. When Shi spoke, her soul didn't fluctuate at all. It was obvious that she was telling the truth. After drinking tea, Knight Sorrow relaxed his emotions. Shi did the same. She had been working hard to cultivate during this period. Knight Sorrow looked at Shi and thought for a moment. How many of the 20 dragon spirit pills do you have left? If you need them, I'll give them to you. I've recovered 1 rank, so 3 or 4 pills won't be enough. I still have 7. Shi took out the bottle of dragon spirit pills. You're quite sincere. However, since your foundation is stable, you can eat as much as you want. I can still afford to raise you. Here's another 10. Knight Sorrow took out another 10 dragon spirit pills. You're really rich. I feel like I'm a prodigal when I eat like this, Shi said. Knight Sorrow shook his head and didn't say anything. In fact, it was a waste for Shi to eat like this. However, Knight Sorrow still had a lot of dragon spirit pills and materials, so he wasn't worried that the god-slaying squad wouldn't have enough. Do you need me to help you with your cultivation? Shi asked. No need. I won't take advantage of a woman. Besides, you don't have to be so nice to me, right? You should hate me, Knight Sorrow said. Would you believe me if I said that I've thought it through? The destruction of my cultivation is my own fault. I can't blame anyone else. As for being nice to you, it's actually just flattery. I'm trying my best to live a better life, said Shi. She wasn't just saying this to Yi Shang, but also to herself. I don't need any flattery. As long as you're well, I won't do anything to you. It's not easy to live, Knight Sorrow said with some emotion. Then, the two left the space-time pagoda and continued forward. After 2 days, Knight Sorrow saw some changes in the terrain. It wasn't naturally formed. There was a deep trench in the ground. This is a sword mark. Knight Sorrow looked down and said. Shi also looked down. It can't be? It contains wind attribute energy. To be able to fight here and leave such a deep sword mark, it must be an expert. Let's continue to investigate, Knight Sorrow said. It was true that they found sword marks and traces of battle, but it was hard to determine where the battlefield was. Because experts were extremely fast, they could travel hundreds of miles in 2 flashes. If one was chasing and the other was escaping, it was hard to say how far the distance would be. I hope it's a sage with a sage treasure. Let's take a closer look. Inshi was also interested. Then, the two of them investigated nearby, following the traces of battle. They killed any nether beasts that blocked their way. Then the two of them saw traces of sword chi. After investigating, they found that they were of the water attribute. Forever Ogyo watch small 8 for free, said. Hee, Night Sorrow, as long as one of them leaves behind a sacred weapon, then my weapon will be secured, Inshi said excitedly. Selfish. Can't you think of leaving behind better treasures such as cultivation methods? Night Sorrow glared at Inshi. For me, a sacred level sword is the most useful, but you're right, Inshi said. Cultivation methods are the best. My current cultivation method can only be cultivated to the saint realm. Cultivation methods mean inheritance, which can increase the strength of the 9 zones. Night Sorrow said. Although Long Xianxing said that he would look for a cultivation technique for him, there might not be any suitable one for him. Besides, if he could obtain an additional cultivation technique, it would bring benefits to many people. Inshi stopped talking because she felt that her perspective on the overall situation was not as good as Night Sorrow's. If she continued talking, it would make her seem inferior. According to the direction of the sword chi and the attack, the two of them continued to fumble their way forward. Then, the two of them saw a severed mountain range. Chapter 760. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. This is an expert. At the very least, I couldn't do this when I was a 7-star saint, Inshi said in shock as she looked at the broken mountain range. 10,000 years ago, the 9 regions world was at its peak. There were many experts, and it was normal for there to be peak saints, Night Sorrow said as they continued to move forward. As they moved forward, Night Sorrow saw traces of an intense battle. At that time, there should be sword chi everywhere, and gullies extending in all directions. The two of them checked carefully. Then, Inshi called out to Night Sorrow because she saw a corpse on one side of the mountain range. It was half a corpse, with 2 legs and half a waist. This is not important. Let's go over there and take a look. Night Sorrow flew toward the other side of the mountain range gap, and Inshi followed beside Night Sorrow. Then, Night Sorrow saw an unexpected scene. It was a corpse without a lower body, and it was holding a long sword in its hand to keep its body from falling. This is a senior cultivator of the wind attribute, Night Sorrow said as he looked at the corpse. He also saw the storage ring on the corpse's left hand. Then, Night Sorrow found something wrong. The half-corpse he saw at the beginning still had flesh and blood that had not decayed, but the half-corpse here had turned into bones. As if she knew what Night Sorrow was thinking, Inshi said. This senior must have been injured first, then cut in half at the waist. After losing all hope, he burned all his essence and blood to fight. It seems that his opponent did not have an easy time. Otherwise, his opponent would have taken away his storage ring and weapon. Even if they didn't perish together, both sides should have been injured. Night Sorrow said with some emotion. This was not the first time he had seen such a situation. The Dark Spirit Saint and Life Saintess had been like this too. When 2 saints fight, their strength is almost the same. If one fights with his life, the other will not have an easy time, Inshi said. Okay, take a look at the weapon, and then we'll bury him, Night Sorrow said to Inshi. Judging from the energy fluctuations, this is a saint-grade longsword. 10,000 years ago, there were many saint-grade experts. So many saint-grade weapons were passed down. Shen Song Inshi bowed to the corpse and took the sword from the corpse's hand. Holding the long sword, Inshi waved it and a ray of sword light cut open the mountain rock beside her. Night Sorrow took the corpse's storage ring, then went to the other side of the mountain gap, wrapped it in energy, and took half of the corpse back, then used the sky-piercing spear to dig a hole. I don't know which side you belong to, but taking your saint crystal is a blasphemy, but it can benefit future generations. Night Sorrow stretched out his left hand and took out the saint crystal from the skull. Night Sorrow then buried the corpse in the pit. Inshi studied the long sword. The long sword was called the Flowing Wind Sword, but Inshi kept it in his storage ring. Why not? Night Sorrow asked. It needs to be nourished. I can use it immediately, but it's not as powerful as my original long sword, Inshi said. Take the time to nourish it. When the time comes, give me your current long sword. I'll give it to someone. My 6th senior sister has the wind attribute, Night Sorrow said. Well, it won't take long. Half a month will do, Inshi said. Then, the two continued to explore the surrounding area, and the scope of their exploration became larger and larger. This was because it was normal for an injured saint to run 1,000 or even a few thousand miles. At noon on the third day, the two found a special situation in another place. The environment was similar to when Knight Sorrow saw the corpse of the life saintess in the death space. It was a lifelike corpse of a middle-aged woman with a blue scale on her forehead. The woman in the middle stood there, and there was a pool under her feet. The pool was not filled with life-spiritual liquid, but with clear water rich in spiritual energy and a small number of soul crystals. "Don't move!" Knight Sorrow stopped Shi. "What's wrong? Can't you see that she's holding a long sword and wearing a storage ring?" Shi looked at Knight Sorrow and said, "I know. This woman's aura is very strange. She's not from the Nine Zones world. Her corpse is so lifelike, so it's hard to say whether her soul will be destroyed. If we're not careful, she might be possessed." "I've seen such things before." Knight Sorrow looked at Shi and said, "That makes sense. I'm not afraid of being possessed. You can hide in the pagoda of time and space," Shi said. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm afraid that your soul defense is low, and she will try to possess you. If she dares to possess me, she's asking for trouble." Knight Sorrow looked at Shi and said, "Our Silver Devil clan has a soul defense secret technique. Last time, we were hit hard by you, so we didn't have time to use the deity ocean defense. Now that we're prepared, we'll be fine," Shi said. Seeing that Shi was confident, Knight Sorrow walked forward and punched the energy shield outside the pool. It was a kind of energy restriction. As the restriction was broken, the middle-aged woman opened her eyes. "You're courting death for disturbing my cultivation." With a loud roar, the middle-aged woman's aura began to rise. Then, Knight Sorrow could not see the middle-aged woman's cultivation level clearly. She held a long sword in her right hand and pulled Knight Sorrow back with her left hand. "Get lost. I'll pretend that nothing happened." The middle-aged woman looked at Shi and Knight Sorrow. "I thought you were powerful. So you're only a level 8 supremacy." Shi's body flashed and she charged toward the middle-aged woman in blue. At this time, the middle-aged woman also drew her sword and fought against Shi. The middle-aged woman in blue's sword technique was very sharp. Her sword technique also contained the power of the rules. However, Shi's attack was strong and fast. She suppressed the middle-aged woman in blue. "If my cultivation level was still here, I'd kill a trashy saint like you in a moment." The middle-aged woman's body flashed and she was about to leave. "Don't talk nonsense. Part of my cultivation level has been destroyed. What's the use of bragging?" Shi chased after her. Knight Sorrow entered the pool and scooped up the few soul crystals. Then, he chased after Shi and the middle-aged woman in blue. At this time, Shi had the absolute upper hand. Because of Shi's fast speed, the middle-aged woman in blue could not escape even if she wanted to. Knight Sorrow did not get too close because he could not intervene in a battle of this level. Knight Sorrow was very happy because the middle-aged woman in blue was still alive. All the resources were still there. As long as the middle-aged woman in blue was killed, Knight Sorrow could go and count the gains. At this time, the middle-aged woman in blue was very angry. In her eyes, Shi was trash. However, Shi's speed made her helpless. She could not win the battle and she could not escape. The only U version S hashtag, the other J60 all FF is a pirated version. Knight Sorrow followed from a distance. He stared at the middle-aged woman's long sword. He felt that the long sword was similar to the one Shi had. It was probably a saint-level sword. Chapter 761. Genius 1 second. Remember love divided by go divided by little? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Seeing that Shi was sure to win, Knight Sorrow took the wine jar and drank as he watched the battle and learned from it. A quarter of an hour later, Shi performed her wind elemental flash and pierced through the head of the saintess in blue while she cursed. "If I wasn't worried about your tricks, I would have killed you a long time ago. Why would I listen to your nonsense?" Shi's long sword vibrated and completely shattered the spirit sea of the saintess in blue. She then took out the holy crystal. "Good. Well done. Let's stop here." Knight Sorrow clapped his hands and said. Shi smiled at Knight Sorrow. She took the saintess in blue's long sword and storage ring and went to Knight Sorrow's side. "This girl is of the water attribute, but I can feel that she is not from the nine-domain world. She was severely injured back then, so she has been in a state of hibernation. Her cultivation has not recovered. Yi Shang still dug a hole and buried the body of the blue-clothed saintess. Then, he took the spoils from Yin Shi. After Night Sorrow put away the holy crystal, he took the storage ring and the longsword and asked Yin Shi, "Is the longsword a saint-grade longsword?" Love, Gob Little, say W. Chu. Yes, definitely. And the quality is better than mine. But you must have prepared it for your Aunt Fei. Besides, the wind attribute is more suitable for me. Yin Shi said. Night Sorrow nodded and then put away the long sword. Let's go into the space-time pagoda to count the loot. After speaking, Night Sorrow brought Yin Shi into the space-time pagoda. Night Sorrow opened the Holy Woman's storage ring and found that she was very rich. She had 2 high-grade spirit weapons. One was of the water element, which Night Sorrow knew was for backup. The other was of the fire element. Other than the 2 spirit tool-level swords, there were also attribute crystals. There were at most a dozen water attribute crystals, a few wind attribute crystals, and a few other attribute crystals. The most valuable one was the Saint Spirit Stone. In this woman's storage ring, there were more than 20 Saint Spirit Stones and a few hundred extreme-grade Spirit Stones. However, there were no upper-grade Spirit Stones. Why aren't there any cultivation methods? Night Sorrow said somewhat gloomily. Cultivation techniques are all memorized in one's mind. Unless it's a real big shot or a cultivation technique that belongs to him or her, the average disciple of a sect wouldn't carry a cultivation technique book with him, Yin Shi said. Night Sorrow then opened the storage ring of the holy woman who was cut in half. There were extreme-grade spirit stones, some healing medicine, and some materials for refining weapons and elixir pills. It's not easy being a 9 regions holy woman. She's short on resources, but she could still fight with her opponent until both sides suffered, Night Sorrow said emotionally. I wonder where this outsider came from. He's really rich in resources, Yin Shi said. It's not easy for you this time. I'll give you some. Take it yourself, Night Sorrow said as he pointed at the pile of extreme-grade spirit stones on the ground and the Saint Spirit Stones on the table. You're really giving it to me? Without you, I wouldn't be able to come in. Besides, what's mine is yours, Yin Shi said as she shook her head. Take it. You need it too. It's good for you and me to increase your strength. Shen Song, Night Sorrow said. Then, Yin Shi took 4 Saint Spirit Stones and 100 extreme-grade Spirit Stones. She then nodded at Night Sorrow. You're not greedy. Call me if you need anything. Night Sorrow nodded and sorted out the materials. Night Sorrow was very happy with this harvest. It was equivalent to solving some of his basic problems. The problem of Wu Lingfei's weapon was solved. Aoi and Sikong Chuyu also had spiritual weapons to use. The only thing missing was Yang Lei's weapon. Yang Lei was of the lightning attribute, so there were relatively few lightning attribute spiritual weapons. Why Zizzer fast 3? 6-inch seeing Night Sorrow shake his head, Yin Shi asked. Night Sorrow didn't hide anything and told her about Yang Lei's situation. Looking at Night Sorrow, Yin Shi took out a long sword. I happen to have a spiritual weapon-level lightning attribute sword. Give it to her. After you nourish your flowing wind sword, you can also take this weapon in my hand. Then, the problem will be solved. No one will recognize your weapon and this lightning attribute weapon, right? Night Sorrow asked. Yin Shi shook her head. Unless the weapon was very special, no one would be able to recognize it. Then Night Sorrow mentioned the problem of Yin Shi's body fragrance. He told Yin Shi not to use any spices in the future. This was simply cheating him. However, Yin Shi's answer made Night Sorrow feel very helpless. She didn't use any spices. Her body fragrance was unique to the women of the Silver Devil clan. This situation made Night Sorrow feel very helpless. He felt that every time he came out of the space-time treasure pagoda, he had to take a shower first. Otherwise, Aoi, Yang Lei, and Sikong Chuyu would find out sooner or later. Seeing Night Sorrow's helpless expression, Yin Shi smiled. She knew that Night Sorrow was troubled by her fragrance last time. Most of the time, Night Sorrow would open up the soul connection between him and Yin Shi. Let's rest for a few days and then continue. I plan to consolidate my cultivation and nourish the flowing wind sword. Yin Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said. In the past, she was domineering and others would listen to her orders. Now, everything was decided by Night Sorrow and she was already used to it. Night Sorrow nodded. He also planned to continue refining the other half of the Desolate Stone and continue strengthening the myriad Tao treasured books attribute power. In the past, Night Sorrow also obtained Desolate Stones. However, because they were stored for a long time and their quality was low, other than the power of Desolates, they didn't have much energy. However, he had recently obtained high-quality Desolate Stones that contained pure energy. While increasing his attribute power, it also increased his myriad Tao treasured books cultivation. Do you want to try and see if I can help you with your cultivation? Inshi looked at Night Sorrow and asked, Woman, I don't need any help with my cultivation. I can't take it even if you say so. Night Sorrow glanced at Inshi. After being stared at by Night Sorrow, Inshi turned around and sat on the bed. Why don't we rest on the bed? Night Sorrow thought for a while and looked at Inshi. In order to respect you, I didn't pry into your thoughts or your privacy. I always feel that you have an ulterior motive. It's not an ulterior motive. It's just that I still need your essence. Inshi's voice was a little low. You're still not done? Haven't you mastered the Wind Yuan body? Hearing Inshi's words, Night Sorrow was a little annoyed. Yes, I have. Didn't I just master it? It still needs to be stabilized. It's not perfect yet. Inshi raised her head and looked at Night Sorrow. I don't want to scold you. If it was another man, he would have been played to death by you. Night Sorrow said angrily. You're wrong. The cultivation method of plucking has always been in my hands. If I was a perverted person, I would have been able to cultivate it long ago and surpass that woman. However, I didn't do that. I'm not a person without a bottom line. As for the wrong path, it was because of the competition with her. It was my desire to excel that led me to a dead end. Inshi said. Night Sorrow nodded. He knew that Inshi was telling the truth. If Inshi was a person without a bottom line, Xiaolon Jun might not have been able to suppress her. Chapter 762. Genius 1 second. Remember Love Go/Little? Shuo Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Well, the preparation is a small matter. Let me tell you first. I will use the energy of the wind body to enter your body and help you nourish your body. However, you can't control or cut off my energy. If you do that, you will be setting me up. Inshi looked at Night Sorrow and said, If the energy of your wind body enters my body and explodes, won't I be in trouble? Night Sorrow muttered. What's in it for me? I am helping you nourish the toughness of your body and the energy in your body. Your body and energy are strong but not tough enough. Inshi said. Then, Inshi told Night Sorrow that there was no need for Night Sorrow to do anything. He just needed to circulate the energy in his body naturally. After speaking, Inshi got on the big bed and took off her skirt. At this time, Night Sorrow couldn't care less. He also took off his robe and got on the big bed. They hadn't done this for a long time. The two of them fought fiercely. After 2 hours, Night Sorrow finally finished. At this time, Inshi flipped onto Night Sorrow's body and sat cross-legged on his waist. She nodded at Night Sorrow and started to cultivate. Night Sorrow looked at Inshi, who was cultivating with her eyes closed. Then, he started to circulate the energy in his body. At this time, a cool energy entered Night Sorrow's body from Inshi's waist. It circulated with the energy of Night Sorrow's myriad Tao treasured book. Night Sorrow knew that this was the energy of Inshi's wind body. He knew that Inshi wouldn't harm him now, so he let this energy circulate in his body with the energy of his myriad Tao treasured book. At first, he didn't feel anything. Then, Night Sorrow felt that his body and the myriad Tao tome's energy had indeed changed under the nourishment of Silver Dusk's energy. It had become more resilient as it surged. The intensity of the energy was still the same as before. However, the previous flaws, bubbles, and varying intensities in the energy had slowly disappeared. In other words, Night Sorrow's myriad Tao tome's energy had become much more complete. An hour later, Inshi withdrew the energy that had entered Night Sorrow's body. She turned over and left Night Sorrow's body, then went to the side to wash herself. Night Sorrow also stood up and put on his robe. At the same time, he nodded at Inshi. This was because the cultivation effect this time was very strong. It was equivalent to nourishing his myriad Tao tome at a very high level. After tidying herself up, Inshi told Night Sorrow that she had also gained a lot. While helping Night Sorrow, she had also taken away the flawed energy of Night Sorrow's myriad Tao treasured book. After she had refined it, it had also increased the intensity of her wind body's energy. This time, Night Sorrow didn't say anything about the benefits that Inshi had gained. This was because he had gained more benefits. Baidu search AI Go Xiao Xua www.ai2x. Then, the two of them began to cultivate. Inshi had to refine the flawed energy of the myriad Tao treasured book. At the same time, she was nourishing the flowing wind sword. When the flowing wind sword was completely nourished, her strength would increase by a large margin. Night Sorrow held the desolate stone and cultivated. At the same time, he let Xiao Kong transfer the energy of his soul power and bloodline power to him. Looking at Night Sorrow being enveloped by dense energy, Inshi curled her lips. She knew that this was the difference in treatment. 2%. Forever free to look at *small c. Say 7. Night Sorrow was the person recognized by the Space-Time Treasure Pagoda. In other words, he was the owner. The Space-Time Treasure Pagoda would of course fully support Night Sorrow's cultivation. She could only cultivate naturally here. Fully refining the desolate stone, Night Sorrow strengthened his soul power and bloodline power at the same time. His soul power increased naturally. However, the quantity of his bloodline power couldn't be increased. He could only continue to strengthen the quality. Half a month had passed. Night Sorrow's myriad Tao treasured book's attribute power had increased by a lot. It was close to saturation. At the same time, his cultivation had also increased by a lot. Looking at the white desolate stone in his hand, Night Sorrow stood up and stretched his waist. Seeing that Night Sorrow had finished cultivating, Inshi also stood up. At the same time, she took out her old spiritual artifact longsword and passed it to Night Sorrow. I have already retrieved the soul imprint. You can give it to your fiancé to use. It seems that you have made great progress in this half a month. Night Sorrow said as he kept the long sword. Inshi nodded to Night Sorrow and told him about her situation. Some time ago, her cultivation had been greatly damaged. Inshi started to cultivate again. The problems that she had not sorted out in the past had also been sorted out. With the Feng Yuan body as the foundation, her cultivation had not recovered, but she had a good foundation. Looking at Night Sorrow, Inshi hesitated for a moment. She bit her lips and said, "Let's cultivate again. Your refining body has just increased, so it is a little unstable. There are more flaws. I can help you nourish them. At the same time, the power of the flaws in your body will be greatly beneficial to me after I refine it." Night Sorrow nodded and started the second real cultivation with Inshi. This time, the two of them cultivated for more than 4 hours. Although it did not solve the problem of Night Sorrow's newly increased cultivation, Night Sorrow's myriad Tao treasured books cultivation was much more stable. Night Sorrow also took a bath. Then, the two of them continued to move forward in the supreme river space. Inshi's combat power had greatly increased. Firstly, she had been refining the dragon spirit pill to increase her cultivation. Secondly, she had a sacred grade treasure sword. The power of her sword chi had increased exponentially. Using the sacred grade long sword, Inshi did not need to use the power of law to protect the long sword. She did not need to worry about the long sword shattering. The power of law could be used to attack, increasing her attack power. It was the same for Night Sorrow. The myriad Tao treasured books cultivation had increased again. Coupled with the fact that it was flawless, it made his combat power much more comfortable. Then the two of them continued to kill. When they were tired, they would enter the time-space treasure pagoda to recover. On this day, when the two of them were killing, a nether beast with a gray crystal-like horn appeared. Night Sorrow, retreat. This is a 3-star sacred grade nether beast. Inshi looked at Night Sorrow and said, "Can you fight? If you can, I will clear the periphery." After Night Sorrow killed a nether beast, he switched between the space-splitting spear and the reincarnation spear. "Okay, be careful." Inshi shouted and charged towards the nether beast. The sacred grade nether beast had half transformed. It had the head of a wolf and the body of a human. It even had a battle sword in its hand. Night Sorrow knew that the nether beast was not a simple group of beasts. They already had a civilization and could forge weapons. They were no different from humans. While Night Sorrow was observing, Shi and the 3-star sacred grade nether beast fought. Shi's cultivation was not as high as the nether beast. However, her realm was high and the power of law she could use was strong. With the help of the sacred grade treasure sword, Shi was not at a disadvantage. After a few rounds of probing, Shi began to display her speed. She circled the nether beast saint and started to attack. After a while, the 3-star sacred grade nether beast was covered in injuries from Shi's attacks. Night Sorrow, who was clearing the battlefield outside, could see that Shi could end the battle at any time. She was using this sacred grade nether beast to train and consolidate her cultivation. Chapter 763. Genius 1 second. Remember love go/little? We provide you with interesting novels to read. 1 hour later, Shi pierced through the nether beast's head with her sword. She had used up a lot of her cultivation, so she did not plan to continue playing. The one and only authentic version. His hashtag P his FC is R? Pirate G, version. Night Sorrow had also been watching for half a day. He had already cleared the nether beasts outside. After Shi threw the nether beast Saint Crystal to Night Sorrow, the two of them left for a distance and entered the time-space pagoda. Both of them sat down to recover and increase their cultivation. At night, the two of them ended their cultivation. While drinking tea, Shi told Night Sorrow that as long as the nether beasts were not too strong, she was not afraid. She said that she could fight any nether beast below 7-star. At the very least, if she wanted to leave, the nether beasts would not be able to keep up with her speed. After cultivating the Wind Yuan body, Shi's speed was not far from her peak. The main thing was that she could continuously use the Wind Yuan escape technique, which greatly increased her survivability. After cultivating for a night, the two of them continued to move forward and kill. Shi told Night Sorrow to be careful because she could not defeat the 2 7-star peak nether beast saints that rushed out of the spatial tunnel last time. However, she could continuously use the Wind Yuan escape technique, so it was not a problem for her to stay alive. In the middle of the journey, Night Sorrow and Shi arrived at the second spatial tunnel that Night Sorrow had explored. After killing all the nether beasts here, Night Sorrow looked at Shi. Shi also looked at Night Sorrow. Now, the question was whether to enter or not. This space should be an Earth attribute space. I don't think it is dangerous. The suppression level is indeed below supremacy. With your ability, we can enter. Shi looked at Night Sorrow and said. Night Sorrow waved his hand at Shi. When Shi stood beside him, Night Sorrow activated the Nihility Protective Shield and brought Shi into the space. In 2 breaths of time, the two of them entered a space with very dense Earth attribute. The two of them saw some nether beasts below the venerable realm. Then they were swept by Shi's sword chi and killed. At this moment, Xiaofan told Night Sorrow that there was a fluctuation of spiritual energy in front of them. Waving his hand at Shi, Night Sorrow followed Lil Kong's guidance and flew forward. After flying for less than 20 li, Night Sorrow stopped, because this was the place that Xiaofan had mentioned. Taking out the sky-piercing spear and stabbing it into the ground, Night Sorrow planned to start digging. With a radius of less than 100 miles, this is a newly formed space. There must be a reason why the space could be formed, Shi said. This might be the core. Let's dig and see. Since we're here, we can't go back empty-handed. Night Sorrow took the sky-piercing spear and started digging, while Shi watched from the side. After a while, Night Sorrow dug out a spirit stone, and Night Sorrow directly collected it. After digging more than 2 zhang deep, Night Sorrow dug out a special situation. There was a large yellow crystal with 4 or 5 saint spirit stones around it. Under the saint spirit stones, there was a corpse. Night Sorrow looked up at Shi. He didn't understand the situation in front of him. An Earth attribute expert died here. This space should be due to his own reasons. It's mainly because it's close to the space barrier, so it mutated, Shi said. Night Sorrow nodded. The yellow crystal wasn't a saint crystal, nor was it an origin stone. It was between the two. It should be an Earth attribute saint crystal that mutated after absorbing the power of the rules of the Earth attribute. Beside the corpse, Night Sorrow also saw a battle sword and a broken storage ring. This place is relatively stable now. It might not have been like this before. After being attacked by the power of the space turbulence, the saint-level battle sword was left behind. but the storage ring was torn apart by the turbulence. The energy here is dense because of the spirit stones in his storage ring. We came too early. After tens of thousands of years, the mutated origin stone will evolve into a space origin stone, but the effect is not bad now, Inchi said. If we take away the spirit stones and the mutated origin stone, this space will have no future. We can't do anything about it, Night Sorrow said. We have to take it away. We don't know what the future will be like. If the Nether Beast takes it away, we'll suffer a great loss, Inchi said. Night Sorrow nodded and took all the resources here. He also put the battle sword into his storage ring. The difference in attributes didn't mean much to him, but he couldn't leave the resources to the Nether Beast. The Supreme River Space was a forbidden area to the 9 regions world. Only Night Sorrow could enter here, but to the Nether Beast, it was no different from its backyard. After taking the Origin Stone and the Spirit Stones, Night Sorrow and Inchi walked around the area. This newly formed space was very barren. There were no refining materials or alchemy materials. Night Sorrow looked at the oppressive space and sighed. This space would be like this in the future. There was no possibility of development. Then, Night Sorrow and Inchi returned to the Supreme River Space and began to move forward. Other than hunting the Nether Beast, Night Sorrow and Inchi cultivated in the Time Pagoda. Sometimes, Inchi would help Night Sorrow nourish his myriad Tao Tome. A month later, Night Sorrow's myriad Tao Tome had reached the peak of the 3rd level of the God Refinement Realm. At the same time, his elemental power had reached saturation. After thinking for a while, Night Sorrow decided to use the power of Desolates to strengthen his body. By then, his body's strength would increase by a lot. After greeting Inchi and informing Little Kong, Night Sorrow went into seclusion. After stabilizing his emotions, Night Sorrow circulated the power of the myriad Tao Tome. It rushed into his flesh, tendons, bones, and marrow. As the power of Desolates entered his arms, Night Sorrow's arms moved rhythmically. His robes rotted and turned to dust. That was the erosion of the power of time. The pain of strengthening the body was very unbearable. Night Sorrow's sweat flowed down his face and his body trembled. Inchi was shocked. She knew what was going on. She knew that Night Sorrow was strengthening his body. She had never heard of such strengthening before. She also knew that Night Sorrow was in pain. She could tell from his expression. After 4 hours, Night Sorrow finished strengthening his arms. After strengthening his arms, Night Sorrow went on to strengthen his legs. Then, the combat robes on his legs slowly turned to dust. Looking at Night Sorrow's sweaty face, Inchi wanted to help wipe it off. However, she realized that she couldn't move her body. She couldn't move at all. Looking up, Inchi knew that the space-time treasure pagoda was guarding her, preventing her from getting close to Night Sorrow. Helpless, Inchi could only sit down and continue watching Night Sorrow cultivate. After strengthening his legs, Night Sorrow went on to strengthen his chest and back. He planned to finish strengthening in one go. After his robes were destroyed, Night Sorrow's body was naked in front of Inchi. Looking at Night Sorrow's strong body, Inchi blushed. She never thought that she would have a man. Chapter 764. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second? We provide you with interesting novels to read. In the world of cultivation, the age of a cultivator was not very clear because those who succeeded in cultivation had a lifespan of thousands of years. A few hundred years was nothing compared to a long life. For example, ordinary people were considered old when they were in their 40s or 50s. However, in the eyes of high-level cultivators, their lives had just begun. Appearance was the main factor to determine whether a cultivator was outstanding or not because their appearance would not change after reaching the void inquiry stage. Looking at Night Sorrow's body that was not plump but full of beauty, Inchi was a little absent-minded. She experienced the saying, "Fate plays tricks on people." Today's scene was beyond her wildest dreams. She was actually pressed down by a man who looked like a child to her. Night Sorrow was strengthening his body with all his might. After strengthening his head, his whole body was also strengthened. However, he did not get up. He circulated the outer chapter of the Myriad Tao book and strengthened his own treasures as well. He wanted to make sure that there were no blind spots on his body. Looking at the trembling huge bird on Night Sorrow's waist, Inchi blushed. She knew that she might have to suffer again. After strengthening that part of Night Sorrow's body, His combat power would also become stronger. Night Sorrow used nearly a day to strengthen his body. His body was also covered in sweat. Looking at the ashes around him, Night Sorrow went to the pool to wash himself. He directly wrapped the dirty water with energy and threw it out of the time and space pagoda. First release. After putting on his combat pants, Night Sorrow sat opposite Yin Shi. He took a cup of tea that Yin Shi poured for him and drank it. How far have you cultivated your body? Yin Shi asked. I've heard of the heavenly desolate sword body in the past. My current body should have surpassed that level. However, I don't have a name for it yet. Night Sorrow said. The current you is definitely the #1 person in the 9 regions in terms of body achievements. Yin Shi looked at Night Sorrow's chest that was filled with energy and said, Come and help me test my strength. Don't use the Saint Grade sword. Use your old sword. Night Sorrow took out Yin Shi's old sword and handed it to her. How do we test it? Yin Shi asked. She didn't want any misunderstandings. The consequences of angering Night Sorrow would be severe. Yi Shang pointed at his chest and asked Yin Shi to start the experiment with a Venerable Realm cultivation base from Venerable Realm Level 1. As for whether or not he would be injured, Night Sorrow was not worried. Even if his chest was pierced, he would not die. Even if his heart was pierced, it would be instantly repaired by the energy in his body. He would be fine. Yin Shi nodded and began to cooperate with Night Sorrow to test the speed of her body. Even when Yin Shi unleashed the power of a 3rd grade honorable, she was still unable to pierce through Night Sorrow's physical defense. This was only the physical defense. Night Sorrow had yet to unleash the energy of the myriad Tao Tome. Then, Yin Shi used the cultivation of a level 4 venerable to assassinate him. Her long sword pierced in 1.5 inches, but it was blocked by Night Sorrow's muscles. Yin Shi took a step back. Night Sorrow was injured. She was afraid that Night Sorrow would be angry. However, she was stunned. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the wound on Night Sorrow's chest quickly healed. Night Sorrow lowered his head and pondered. He realized that his body could ignore attacks below the same level of cultivation. However, attacks above the same level could be broken. At this moment, Night Sorrow activated the energy of the myriad Tao Tome and merged it into his body. He shouted at Yin Shi again, "En, let's do it again." Then, Yin Shi unleashed the power of a level 4 venerable to attack Night Sorrow again. This time, her long sword only pressed in 1/2 inch into Night Sorrow's chest. However, it did not pierce through. Night Sorrow nodded at Yin Shi again and asked her to increase her cultivation to attack. Yin Shi unleashed the power of a level 5 venerable and held a spiritual weapon. However, she only managed to pierce in 1.5 inches. That's it. Night Sorrow looked at his recovered body and put on his outer robe. What exactly are you cultivating? Yin Shi did not understand. She had never seen a cultivator who could cultivate his body to such an extent. You've only seen my current body's achievements. You don't know how much pain I've gone through to cultivate this technique. Yi Shang sighed with emotion. I can imagine that your current body should have a name, right? Yin Shi asked curiously. Not yet. The name of the 7th rank is Indestructible Golden Body. It's not considered a successful cultivation yet. Night Sorrow took another sip of tea and said, Indestructible Golden Body. This name is so domineering. You will have no problem. Now, you can completely ignore the attacks of cultivators with lower cultivation than you. Yin Shi said, My current situation is a little different from the Indestructible Golden Body recorded in the technique. Because I added the power of desolates, my power should be much stronger than what is recorded in the technique. It's considered a mutated indestructible golden body. Night Sorrow said. That Huang Wudao's body is called Desolate Sword Body. It's more appropriate for you to call it Desolate Indestructible Golden Body. Yin Shi said. Desolate Indestructible Golden Body? Isn't this name a little too big? How can I call it Desolate Indestructible Golden Body? Night Sorrow looked at Yin Shi. Yes, when you cultivate it, you will be worthy of this name. Yin Shi nodded seriously. Then, the two of them drank tea and chatted. Night Sorrow had just finished his breakthrough and wanted to relax. In addition, his myriad Tao Tome's cultivation had decreased. The main reason was that it consumed a lot of energy to strengthen his body. It dropped from the late stage of level 3 to the early stage of level 3. Then, Night Sorrow stabilized his cultivation for 2 days. During this time, Shi helped Night Sorrow nourish his body. The main reason was that Night Sorrow's desolate indestructible golden body had just been strengthened and was not smooth enough. Of course, Shi also took what she wanted. What made her feel conflicted was that Night Sorrow's strengthened bird had become much more ferocious. She could not bear it. In Night Sorrow's words, she did not have a big mouth. If she had to force herself to eat such a big meal, she would definitely feel uncomfortable. In the end, Shi looked at Night Sorrow with fear in her eyes. She was afraid of Night Sorrow. She was glad that Night Sorrow was not too tyrannical. In the following days, the two of them were either moving forward or cultivating. Night Sorrow's cultivation had stabilized. His genuine chi cultivation was at the 4th level of the honor realm. It was impossible for him to advance in a short period of time. The same was true for the myriad Dao treasured tome. They were both stabilizing their cultivation and advancing slowly. Shi, on the other hand, was very nervous. She was not far from becoming a 3-star saint. According to her, it was only possible to kill a 7-star saint after becoming a 4-star saint. Cultivation did not equate to combat power. However, if the difference in cultivation was huge, even if one's combat power was equal, it would still be difficult to kill. If one's cultivation was similar, if one's combat power was strong and had a sacred weapon, it would be possible to kill. Night Sorrow reminded Shi. Although it was urgent to increase her cultivation, it was also important to condense her genuine chi. Then, Shi's explanation made Night Sorrow feel relieved. She used the power of the soul and the power of rules to compress and condense her genuine chi. Her genuine chi would not be empty. After moving forward for another month, the two of them saw the scene of the great battle again. However, they were disappointed after searching for a while. It was because they saw the broken sky. The battle was too intense. It broke the space and entered the space turbulence. It's hard to say whether we are dead or alive, but the resources definitely have nothing to do with us, Shi said. Chapter 765. Genius 1 second. Remember Love Go divided by Xiao? We provide you with interesting novels to read. Shi was also helpless because there was nothing she could do about it. We've seen quite a number of battlefields. However, the things left behind by Void Inquiry Stage experts and Venerable Realm experts are not of much use to us. Night Sorrow said. During this period of time, Night Sorrow and Shi did find a few battlefields. However, they were not saints' battlefields. Hence, they were not of much use to Night Sorrow and Shi. In a battle between saints, if they didn't perish together, we wouldn't be able to find anything left behind. Even if one party was injured, they would still take away the spoils of war of the loser. Shi said. Yes. We can't have too much hope in life. Our harvest this time is already not bad. Night Sorrow nodded. After that, Night Sorrow and Shi approached the spatial passageway of Dongxiang City. Night Sorrow told Shi to be cautious because there were a few Saint Realm nether beasts at the entrance of the spatial passageway. Shi thought for a while and felt that it was better to explore the passageway first. If she could fight, then they would decide what to do next. This time, the exploration was not as strenuous as Night Sorrow's exploration because Shi's true chi cultivation base was greatly damaged. However, the cultivation of her soul power was still the same as when she was at her peak. It could even be said that she had made some progress. Baidu search, Xiao Shua, www.aichux.com. After exploring the passageway for a while, Shi retreated. There's no way to fight. The two high-level nether beasts at the entrance of the spatial passageway are the two high-level Saint Realm nether beasts that broke through the spatial passageway. At that time, the saints of the 9 regions joined forces and still couldn't defeat them in a short time. Now, I don't stand a chance at all. Then forget it. Let's continue to explore other places. If we don't find anything, we'll return. Night Sorrow said. If things were impossible, Night Sorrow would not force it. After that, Night Sorrow and Shi changed their direction and continued to explore the passageway. Next, the two of them saw more fallen saints, but nothing was left behind. Their weapons, storage rings, and even their saint crystals had disappeared. It's the same for 2 saints in a row. They had the aura of the 9-domain world on their bodies. After they were killed, Their saint crystals were taken away as if they were harvesting materials. The other party is very cruel, Inshi said. It's possible. Low-level saints are the materials. Yishang recalled Wu Lingfei's words. Who would be so generous as to use the saints of our 9-domain world as materials? Inshi was shocked by her own words because this conclusion was too terrifying. Let's not talk about this for now, let's continue. Knight Sorrow was also shocked by this conclusion. He then observed the Nihility Fate Pearl in his divine sea. He knew that if he refined the Nihility Fate Pearl, he would have a place to settle down. Even if there was a war, he would not be afraid. The two of them continued to cultivate as they moved forward. After half a month, Inshi entered the level of a 3-star saint. Knight Sorrow's cultivation also improved greatly during the consolidation. After Inshi entered the level of a 3-star saint, Knight Sorrow stopped moving forward. Even if Inshi did not say anything, Knight Sorrow knew that she wanted to stabilize her cultivation. Inshi stabilized her cultivation for 2 days. She looked at Knight Sorrow and asked for his essence. The process was painful and happy for her. After that, she used the energy of the Wind Yuan body to help Knight Sorrow nourish his body and energy. Knight Sorrow, you're like this now. It's a test for your future fiancé. I don't believe that they can do it if I can't. Inshi did not care about any shame in front of Knight Sorrow. Since the matter had already happened, there was no point in putting on a fake appearance. Inshi had the mental state of a saint and was very open-minded about things. You're alone. There are 3 of them. Currently, 2 of them have cultivated to the pinnacle. It's nothing. Besides, I pity them. Knight Sorrow took a sip of tea and went to meditate and cultivate. Shen Song looked at Knight Sorrow's figure. Inshi was very angry because Knight Sorrow's words implied that his fiancé needed pity, but she did not. Sighing, Inshi went to meditate and cultivate. She understood that she was just a subdued servant, a servant girl. Knight Sorrow treated her like this was already very good. After resting for 2 days, Knight Sorrow and Inshi continued to move forward. Knight Sorrow and Inshi were shocked by the situation near the entrance of the Netherworld. There were Netherworld beasts everywhere, and there were 2 saints among them. In such a situation, the 2 could not get close. After moving some distance, Knight Sorrow and Inshi entered the time-space treasure pagoda. Knight Sorrow looked at Inshi and said, "They want to take over the supreme river space. Should I not keep it a secret and bring all the saints of the 9 domains here to fight and kill them?" No. This space has the Netherworld attribute. The Netherworld beasts are compatible with the attribute here, and their combat power is increased. The people of the 9 domains world are suppressed. We will be at a disadvantage if we fight here. F***CK. In ancient times, the supreme river space did not exist. Our ancestors would not be at a disadvantage if they fought here. But now it's different. Knight Sorrow lamented. Knight Sorrow, I feel that this ancient Supreme River battlefield might be related to Clear Sky City. Could it be that the Supreme River battlefield is below Clear Sky City? Inshi suggested a bold idea. After hearing Inshi's words, Knight Sorrow stood up and paced back and forth, thinking. He felt that Inshi's idea was very possible. The Supreme River battlefield of the ancient investiture of the gods was an ancient battlefield. 2 royal cities disappeared at the same time. Clear Sky City also appeared in the Qingtian domain, and Haohai City was not far from Dongxiang City. Seeing Yishang frowning and thinking, Inshi said, "I'm just saying it casually. Don't listen." She didn't want Yishang to be troubled. You make a lot of sense. Knight Sorrow took out the map that Wu Lingfei had given him, and then took out the map of the 9 domains world. He marked the location of the Eastern Xian Domain's Medicine Valley's Passage and Dongxiang City's Passage. After comparing them, he made a mark on the map that Wu Lingfei had taken out. He knew 2 points and wanted to verify the 3rd. This was not difficult for Knight Sorrow. Seeing the location that he had verified, Knight Sorrow sighed. Inshi poured Knight Sorrow a glass of water and asked Knight Sorrow what he was doing. After drinking the water and glancing at Inshi, Knight Sorrow pointed at the map and said, "Your speculation is correct. Clear Sky City and the Supreme River Space are connected. The corresponding point should be here. Even if there is a deviation, it should be in this area." After hearing Knight Sorrow's words, Inshi was surprised. Is that so? Indeed. I originally planned to go back after investigating a bit more, but with this discovery, I have to go and take a look, Night Sorrow said after looking at the map again. Then let's go and take a look. Fortunately, my soul power is still at its peak. If we investigate carefully, there won't be any great danger, Inshi said. Just be careful. Maybe we can find something, Night Sorrow said. If we find something, maybe we really have a chance to enter Clear Sky City in advance. Inshi was a little excited because that was the real big opportunity. Opportunities are fought for by individuals, but the crisis of the 9 domains is for everyone. I still want to know the secret of the investiture of the gods. Will it threaten the current 9 domains world? Night Sorrow said. Chapter 766. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. You don't have anyone you care about, so some of your thoughts are different from mine. This is nothing. I care about too many people, so my pursuit is different. Seeing that she was a little embarrassed, Night Sorrow said with a smile. You don't have to cover up for me. I am indeed inferior. She looked at Night Sorrow and said. Then, the two of them advanced toward the area that Night Sorrow had marked out. However, it would take some time. Along the way, they killed and investigated. With the formation of the desolate immortal body, Night Sorrow's combat power skyrocketed. He could even kill a mid-level honorable nether beast. Even a high-level honorable nether beast could not do anything to him. She was shocked because Night Sorrow had the potential to become an invincible honorable. Moreover, he was the king of invincible honorables. Without any high-level saint-level nether beasts blocking their way, Night Sorrow and she were able to move forward without any difficulty. However, as they got closer to the predetermined area, Night Sorrow also found a problem. A spatial storm appeared out of nowhere, and there were cracks in the sky. There really is a problem. This spatial storm is the same as the one outside Haotian City. Inshi said. No, according to my estimation, there are still 200 miles to the corresponding location of Haotian City. Even if we can move forward now, we can't go that far. In the end, all our efforts will be in vain. Night Sorrow said. Then what should we do? The power of the spatial turbulence is too strong. Inshi observed and said. This is a big formation set up by someone. However, the foundation of the formation is very deep. It is difficult to figure out and break. It can be said that it is beyond the scope of my understanding. Night Sorrow said. You can tell? Inshi looked at Night Sorrow and asked. The spatial turbulence and spatial storm's natural rotation and trajectory are not like this. I can tell from this point. However, the person who set up the formation borrowed the power of heaven and earth. Therefore, the power of the formation is what we see. Night Sorrow said. Inshi nodded. Although she wanted to investigate, it was impossible for her to do so at the moment. The spatial turbulence was extremely violent, and it was not something that could be resisted by human strength. Night Sorrow planned to look around the spatial turbulence, but he was disappointed. This was because the area sealed by the spatial turbulence was like the canyon. It was completely sealed, and there was no edge to explore. This formation is beginning to lose its balance because of the increase in the crack in the sky. However, it will take time for the formation to be destroyed. Let's go. In the future, we'll just visit when we're free. Love, go, little, say, Night Sorrow found a secluded place and set up an illusion array, a killing array, and a teleportation array. She didn't understand. She didn't know what Night Sorrow was doing. Looking at Inshi's hesitant expression, Night Sorrow said, It's millions of miles from the spatial passage in the Medicine Valley to here. It's a waste of time to fly back and forth. I have a small teleportation crystal here. It's not a waste to use it here. After everything was done, Night Sorrow and Inshi entered the space-time pagoda to rest. Night Sorrow planned to rest for a while before leaving. This was how it was, and there was no point in continuing. It was better to look elsewhere. Just as Night Sorrow entered the space-time pagoda, a violent fluctuation came from the Night Moon Sea. Then, a middle-aged man wearing the Night Moon King battlesuit and a purple gold crown walked out. The middle-aged man was well-built, and his eyes were bright and full of spirit. When he opened and closed his eyes, there was a flash of light. He stood there with the air of a king. As the middle-aged man appeared, 5 or 6 people came out one after another behind him. Baidu search AI Go female sign Xiao, say www.aichuxs. So not long after they stood still, someone came. It was Yiling Lan. He had come to the Night Moon Sea to deal with some matters and had sensed the energy fluctuation here. Yiling Lan greets brother Invincible King, royal uncles, Prince Wuyo, and young concubine Wuyo. Yiling Lan bowed to them. Where's King Ling Xie? The person in front asked. He was the current ruler of the Night Moon Kingdom, Invincible King Yiling Huan. Therefore, even if the emperor came out, he would still stand behind him. Then, Yiling Lan explained the current situation of the Night Moon Sea and Yiling Xie's whereabouts. Elder Ling Lan, where is Xiao now? A slender woman with shoulder-length black hair and a face full of grace and elegance asked. Young concubine, young master left the Night Moon Kingdom 2 months ago. I don't know where he is now, but he left me a message crystal and said that I can crush it if there's an emergency. Should I crush it now? Yiling Lan took out the message crystal and was about to crush it. He was too excited that the Yi clan had finally returned. No need. Send someone to inform King Ling Xie to come back. We'll talk about Xiao later, Yiling Huan said. Your Highness, young master thinks of himself as Night Sorrow and is unwilling to change his name, Yiling Lan said. At the same time, he explained why Night Sorrow was unwilling to change his name. Then don't change it. A man of Night Moon must be responsible. Those 2 guards are worth remembering, Yiling Huan said after hearing Yiling Lan's words. Yiling Lan brought a group of people to a mansion in the Night Moon Kingdom to rest. He couldn't let others know that the Yi clan had returned. Then, he went to inform Yiling Xie. After sitting for a while, Yiling Huan stood up. I think everyone wants to see the Night Moon now. Let's cover up and go take a look. Then, the group left the Night Moon Kingdom and walked towards the Night Moon City. Night Moon City had recovered very well and was very prosperous. Yiling Huan and the others watched from inside the city after calling for a beast carriage. Unspecified currency, the only K, positive H? Version, S1 and R asterisk is a pirate plus T version. Haha. Night Moon is doing well under the leadership of Night Sorrow. An old man with a golden crown said. He was the 3rd son of the Moon Emperor, Night Divine Thunder, and his title was Divine Thunder Emperor. At this moment, the beast carriage stopped and the driver opened the door. Night Sorrow is our young master. Not the brat you all are talking about. Get off. I don't want to do business with you. This scene stunned everyone in the carriage. I told you to get off? The driver said angrily. We just said something casually. Do you have to be like this? Night Divine Thunder said gloomily. Of course. No matter if it's the Night Moon now or the Night Moon in the future, no one can insult our young master. No one can. Get off. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Don't think that your cultivation is high. We Night Moon people are not afraid. The driver took out the sword at his waist. You're strong. Let's get off. Night Divine Thunder took a deep breath and said, Humph. I'm not strong, but our Night Moon has a strong young master. Young master said that on the Night Moon, the sky belongs to us Night Moon people. The driver drove the beast carriage away. 8th uncle. How do you feel? Yiling Huan looked at Night Divine Thunder and asked. He's very popular. When will I meet this domineering brat? Night Divine Thunder had mixed feelings. Chapter 767. Genius 1 second. Remember Love Go divided by Xiao? We provide you with interesting novels to read. Then, the few of them casually looked around the streets of Night Moon. Baidu search AI Go female sign Xiao, say www.aichuxs. And the few of them entered a tea house. There were whispers in the tea house. They were all talking about Night Sorrow, but no one mentioned the name Night Sorrow. They all called him Young Master Shang. Hearing everyone talking about how Night Sorrow had single-handedly annihilated the cities of the various dynasties. He had killed so many of them that they had to compromise in the end. Princess Consort Wu Yu's eyes turned red, and tears started to fall from her eyes. Qing. Everything is in the past. In the future there will be father and the various emperors. There will be no need for the child to continue suffering. Yi Wuyo, who was wearing a silver crown and white robe, said softly. He had a straight nose and sword-like eyebrows that reached his temples. He went hunting in his teens to make a living. Who knows how much he has suffered? Yu Qing wiped her tears and said, "Sharpness comes from sharpening. This is his destiny. However, the current situation is good. It is good for a descendant whose talent far surpasses ours to be sharpened like this." Another old man said. He was the 8th son of the Moon Emperor, Yi Shenquang. His title was God-Crazy Emperor. The few of them quietly listened to the discussions. Finally, Yi Shenlei muttered, "Why do I feel like there is nothing that kid doesn't dare to do?" Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation because there were people talking about how Knight Sorrow was not afraid of Chen Yuan. A martial artist must have a fearless heart. He has not been nurtured by his family. To reach this step today, his state of mind and temperament should have been tempered greatly. Yi Linghuan said as he took a sip of tea. "Wu Yu, I want to see our future daughters-in-law." Yu Qing looked at Yi Wuyo and asked. "Yu Qing, wait for a moment. Let's wait for your uncle Ling Xie and Wang Wang to come back. We'll take a look together." Yi Linghuan nodded at Yu Qing. Afterward, the few of them sat on the teleportation circle and looked at the other cities. Night Moon's recovery made them very happy. Baidu search AI Go female sign Xiao, say www.aichuxs. So when they returned to the Night Moon, Yi Lingxie and Yi Linglan had returned. Yi Lingxie was very excited. He hugged Yi Linghuan and then greeted the others. After sitting down, Yi Linghuan explained the current situation. Yi Linghuan and the others already knew a little about the current situation. Now, they just needed to know the details. Does Night Sorrow mean that he will find a way to deal with the saint from the 7-star dynasty? Yi Linghuan asked in surprise. Yes. He said that we don't need to beg for help. He has a strong personality and can't stand to see people beg for help. That's why he doesn't want us Night Moon people to beg for help, Yi Lingxie said. This king wants to fight the 7-star dynasty. It seems that he doesn't need to. Let's wait for him to come back. Yi Linghuan said after thinking for a while. He knew that Night Sorrow wouldn't do anything he wasn't sure about. I don't know where that kid ran off to. The young master of Night Moon actually disappeared. This is the first time in the history of Night Moon, Night God Thunder said. Third uncle, which of the things that Yi Shang has done is not unique in Yi Yu's history? Yi Lingxie asked. Your cultivation is not bad. Invincible Saint Realm? Night God Thunder looked at Yi Lingxie and asked. I have a good grandnephew who gave me space crystals. That's why I strengthened my bloodline talent to the limit, Yi Lingxie said. He gave all his resources to his family. In the future, he can only go to his family to strengthen his bloodline talent, Night God Kuang said with a sigh. Night Sorrow has the Qingtian region's time and space pagoda. His bloodline talent can be continuously strengthened. That's not a problem. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken up his cultivation resources, Yi Lingxie said. Then Yi Lingxie asked about the situation of the other people in Night Moon, including his father and the previous ruler of Night Moon, Emperor Shen Xian. Yi Linghuan told him that some people were still cultivating. After he came out of seclusion, he took a few people to be the vanguard. When the battle started, Night Moon's powerful people would appear. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go to the city in the sky and see this king's 3 granddaughters-in-law, Yi Linghuan said. Then the group followed Yi Lingxie to Night Moon City. It was still evening, and the members of the god-slaying team were still cultivating. Yi Lingxie led the group directly to Night Sorrow's residence. Yi Linglan introduced Papa Gu, who was cultivating in the courtyard, to Yi Linghuan and the others. Knowing that Papa Gu was the benefactor who had raised Night Sorrow, Night Moon's people all cupped their hands in greeting. Then Yi Linglan introduced Yi Linghuan and the others to Papa Gu. I'm sorry. My abilities are limited. I didn't take good care of Night Sorrow, Papa Gu said apologetically. Please don't say that. Night Sorrow's achievements today are closely related to your education. You are our benefactor. Yi Wuyo pulled his wife and bowed to Papa Gu again. Not only are you and your wife's benefactor, but you are also our dynasty's benefactor, Yi Linghuan said. At this time, Wu Lingfei appeared and stood in front of the residence's door. Golden Phoenix. Yi Linghuan cupped his hands in greeting. You're back. It's good that you're back. Wu Lingfei said. Then everyone sat down and chatted casually. Wu Lingfei knew these people from Night Moon's dynasty, so their conversation was more casual. While they were chatting, Sikong Chuyu, Aoi, and Yang Lei returned from outside. The moment they entered the residence, they were stunned. They didn't understand what was going on. Haha. Back then, this king represented Night Sorrow's parents at your engagement ceremony. Now that his parents are here, even an ugly daughter-in-law has to meet her parents-in-law. Besides, you are all outstanding. Yi Ling smiled wickedly and introduced them to everyone. Our son has good taste. Yu Qing looked at Sikong Chuyu and the other two with a smile in her eyes. She was very satisfied. Our Night Moon's men all have one wife. He's good, 3 at once. Yi Wuyo muttered. This was indeed the Night Moon's dynasty's tradition. All the emperors and princes had one wife. What's wrong? If you have the ability, go find one too. Are you not satisfied with your son's ability? Come sit with mother. Yu Qing looked at Yi Wuyo with dissatisfaction. Then she waved at Sikong Chuyu and the other two. Sikong Chuyu and the other two shyly called her mother. After the engagement ceremony, they couldn't call her auntie anymore. You're back. Do you have any plans? At this time, Wu Lingfei spoke about serious matters. I'm not afraid of you laughing at this. We still want to see what Night Sorrow has to say. Yi Linghuan thought for a moment and said his opinion. That's for the best. Actually, in terms of connections, Night Sorrow's connections are broader than yours. If he wants to fight, there are many people who are willing to help him, Wu Lingfei said with a smile. At this time, Yu Qing pulled Sikong Chuyu and the other two to the side and asked about Night Sorrow. Since Night Sorrow's 1-month birthday, she hadn't seen Night Sorrow. She missed him so much that she wanted to know more from Sikong Chuyu and the others. Chapter 768. Geniuses remember love in 1 second? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. After listening to Wu Lingfei's explanation, Yi Linghuan and the others understood that the 9 zones were in chaos. Some saints had already appeared. If the Night Moon dynasty wanted to take revenge, the most direct obstacle was the 7-star saint of the 7-star dynasty. Also, if the Night Moon dynasty doesn't start a war, they won't dare to attack the Night Moon dynasty, said Wu Lingfei. Yi Linghuan nodded. He knew that Night Sorrow had traded his life for some time to rest. Lord Golden Phoenix, Night Moon can't tolerate their sneak attack. We must fight, said Night God Thunder. I'm not trying to persuade you to stop. Night Sorrow won't stop either. The main thing is that we need a thorough plan. We need to know the recent movements of the 7-star dynasty, the Green Abyss dynasty, the Red Leaf dynasty, and the Golden Dragon King dynasty. We need to know if there are any hidden saints, said Wu Lingfei. Yi Linghuan nodded. Night Moon wanted to take revenge and rise. They couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Since they were going to attack, they had to make sure nothing went wrong. All right, I'll be in seclusion in the pavilion in the back. If there's anything, let me know. Wu Lingfei stood up and nodded to the people of the Night Moon dynasty. Then she left Night Sorrow's residence. Our Night Sorrow can't grow without Lord Golden Phoenix's help. We need to remember this, said Night God Kwang. The others nodded. The Night Moon people were vengeful, but they also wouldn't forget kindness. I wonder when that Night Sorrow kid will come back, muttered Night God Thunder. He was the most short-tempered of the emperors of the Night Moon dynasty. Third brother, your temper is getting worse, said Night God Kwang as he glanced at Night God Thunder. Your Highness and the emperors will stay in the city in the sky. There is a newly built pavilion there. Yi Linglan, who had been standing to the side, said. Yi Linghuan nodded. Then make the arrangements. As for the other 2 imperial uncles, I intend to expel Yuexiang City from the Night Moon dynasty and erase them from the Yi clan's records. Their existence is the shame of the Night Moon dynasty. Night God Thunder and Night God Kwang nodded. Currently, Yi Linghuan was in charge of Night Moon. He asked this to give face to his elders because these people were the descendants of the Moon Emperor's 5th son. They were related to Night God Thunder and Night God Kwang. Having made his decision, Yi Linghuan immediately arranged for Yi Lingxie to handle this matter. Afterwards, he and Yi Linglan went to their new residence. AI Chu Chu Shua 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 W. AI Chu X. However, Yi Wuyo and Yu Qing didn't leave. Yi Wuyo drank tea with old Gu. Yu Qing chatted with Sikong Chuyu, Yang Lei, and Aoi. Hearing that Night Sorrow had been ambushed and injured by a high-level venerable, Yi Wuyo's hand trembled. They really bullied our Night Moon. It's fine. Night Sorrow's injuries weren't serious. Later, the Tianfeng dynasty was annihilated, the Silver Devil clan was destroyed, and the Western Azure sect suffered a heavy blow. However, I heard from Auntie Fei that the Western Nether region has a very powerful saint. Only Lord Long Shenxing can restrain them, said Aoi. My son should have been the high and mighty young master of Night Moon. Now, he dares to bite any cat or dog. It's my incompetence as a father. Yi Wuyo stood up, the veins on his clenched fists throbbing. It was clear that he was very angry. Father, Night Sorrow has never relied on his status to do anything. He is the deputy valley master of the Medicine Valley, but no matter how difficult it was for him, he never asked the Medicine Valley to do anything. After becoming the young master of the Tianji Tower, he also never relied on the prestige of the Tianjin Tower, said Yang Lei. He has a backbone, but this made him suffer a lot. Yu Qing's voice was a little choked up. I think he will be back soon. In the past, he never went out for such a long time, said Aoi after thinking for a while. Then, Yi Linglan came to call Yi Wuyo and arranged their accommodation. However, Yu Qing didn't want to go. She wanted to chat with Sikong Chuyu and the others. Elder Linglan, we will have dinner with my parents today. Later, my parents will rest here. We will go to their accommodation tomorrow, said Aoi to Yi Linglan. Yi Linglan nodded and left. He knew that Aoi and the others would make the arrangements. Night Sorrow and Yin Shi fought during the day and rested at night to cultivate. Although they didn't gain much, they still had a lot of materials for refining pills and weapons. This time, it's not bad. We got 2 sacred grade weapons and a lot of spirit stones. However, for you, we don't have any suitable weapons or protective treasures, said Yin Shi. I don't need them. Night Sorrow waved the spear in his hand and moved the space-time pagoda in his sleeve. As for weapons and protective treasures, Night Sorrow didn't need them. Looking at Night Sorrow's reincarnation spear and space-time pagoda, Yin Shi nodded. Perhaps Night Sorrow was the only one in the 9 regions world who dared to say that he didn't need sacred grade weapons and protective treasures. Looking at Yin Shi's envious eyes, Night Sorrow shook his head. He still had a mid-level sacred treasure that he hadn't used in the Medicine Valley. As they moved forward, the two of them got closer to the space passage in the Medicine Valley. Night Sorrow's cultivation of the Myriad Tao Tome had also improved a lot. Night Sorrow planned to stabilize his vital energy cultivation. He didn't even plan to use the Dragon Spirit Pill while he was a level 4 supremacy. The main reason was that his cultivation had improved too quickly. He had to stabilize it properly. Night Sorrow didn't rush Yin Shi. Instead, he hoped that Yin Shi would be more stable. Yin Shi had already recovered to a 3-star saint for a while. As long as she became a 4-star saint, she wouldn't have to worry about the scourge of a 7-star saint. Yin Shi was very happy that Night Sorrow didn't rush her. This was also a sign that Night Sorrow cared about her. A month later, Night Sorrow and Yin Shi returned to the entrance of the Medicine Valley region. The two of them once again started killing the nether beasts that had gathered. Without sacred grade nether beasts, Night Sorrow and Yin Shi didn't feel any pressure at all. It wasn't even a challenge. After killing the nether beasts, Night Sorrow found a secret place to set up a teleportation array. It was a teleportation array that corresponded to the teleportation array in the space storm. This way, they could teleport between the two places and save a lot of time. They didn't need to fly. After setting up the teleportation array, Night Sorrow set up an illusion array and a killing array outside. This was to prevent the teleportation array from being destroyed by the nether beasts. After hiding the teleportation array, Night Sorrow set up a sealing array outside the space tunnel. Then, he added an illusion array outside the sealing array. With both sides having sealing arrays, and with the concealment of the illusion array, it would be extremely difficult for the nether beasts to enter the 9 zones world. With a protective shield around Yin Shi, Night Sorrow passed through the space tunnel. Without breaking the seal, they returned to the Nine Zones world. The aura of the Nine Zones world is so comfortable. It's our origin, she said. Free fee for reading novels unspecified currency. Yes, the Nine Zones world is our origin. It's our home. If we go to other spaces, we'll be outsiders. We won't have a sense of belonging. Night Sorrow felt the same way. Then, she asked Night Sorrow about his future plans. Chapter 769. Genius 1 second. Remember love go/little? I will provide you with interesting novels to read. When he reached the place where he entered the void space, Night Sorrow realized that the environment had changed. The original space tunnel had become a deep mountain wall. Night Sorrow used the space rend. After tearing the space apart, he searched for the void space in the space turbulence, but he could not find it. This made Night Sorrow feel very helpless. If he did not refine the void fate pearl, it would be very difficult to find the void space that was completely sealed, let alone control it. Refining the void fate pearl was the key to solving this problem. After leaving the space turbulence, Night Sorrow put Shi into the time pagoda and flew back to Danding City. After being away for more than 3 months, Night Sorrow was in a hurry to go back. Otherwise, Sikong Chuyu, Aoi, and Yang Lei would be worried. When he reached the teleportation circle of Danding City, Night Sorrow stood in front of the Golden Fire Palace for a while. He knew that if Yu Yongyu was inside, he would come out. If not, he was not there. After waiting for a while and seeing that there was no movement, Night Sorrow got on the teleportation circle and started to teleport. After a few times, Night Sorrow returned to the city in the sky. He walked out of the teleportation circle and walked towards the arena. When he arrived at the arena, Night Sorrow was stunned. He saw a woman he did not know, but he felt very close to her. January 1st? Original FW. It plus his $R both FW pirated versions. Yu Qing, who was sitting at the edge of the arena and watching the members of the god-slaying team cultivate, stood up. She looked at Night Sorrow, who was wearing a white battle robe. His face was very similar to Yi Wuyo's face. She knew who he was. Are you Xiao? Yu Qing's voice was trembling. I am Night Sorrow. May I ask who you are? Night Sorrow looked at Yu Qing and asked. Night Sorrow, she's your mother. Sikong Chuyu and Yang Lei came over and said, Mother. Night Sorrow looked at Yu Qing, his eyes filled with joy and shock. He didn't know what to say. Mother knows your name is Night Sorrow, but your nickname is Xiao. Yu Qing's eyes were filled with tears. Night Sorrow greets Mother. Night Sorrow pulled his robe and knelt down. With a wave of her sleeve, Yu Qing blocked Night Sorrow's bent body. How could she let Night Sorrow kneel? She knew that Night Sorrow had to kneel on one knee to become a disciple. It's your mother's fault. I've made you suffer all these years. Yu Qing stepped forward and hugged Night Sorrow. Mother, I've been fine all these years. I'm really happy to know that you and Father are doing well. I'm really afraid that I'm an orphan. Love, go little say. Chu Night Sorrow's nose was a little sour. No, your father and I didn't want to abandon you. We had no choice. That was the only way to protect you. Later on, we asked Uncle Wang Xie to search for you in the vicinity of Beiyu City, but there was no news. Yu Qing's face was full of apology. She felt very sorry for Night Sorrow. Father Gu said that when he found me, there were guards who died in battle by my side. I didn't feel inferior because I knew that I wasn't abandoned. It was just that my parents couldn't find me, so I had to work hard to find my way home. Night Sorrow said. His hand, which was being held by Yu Qing, was trembling. He had been determined to find his family for many years. He had always been very strong. Now that strength was being torn apart by his family. In the future, we'll be together as a family. We'll fight side by side. Yi Wuyo came. Beside him were Yi Linghuan and Night Moon's emperors. Originally, they were arranging the battle plans. Then, they found out about the situation here. Xiao, this is your father and grandfather. The other two are the Divine Thunder Emperor and the Divine Madness Emperor. Love, go little say. Chu Yu Qing introduced them. Night Sorrow wanted to pay his respects, but Yi Wuyo stopped him. He was now filled with guilt. How could he refuse Night Sorrow's greeting? Then, the group went to Night Sorrow's residence. Yu Qing pulled Night Sorrow to sit beside her. She kept asking about Night Sorrow's life. Sikong Chuyu, Yang Lei, and Aoi personally cooked and prepared the dishes. Then, they all ate dinner together. Night Sorrow, in terms of seniority, I'm your great-uncle. But in Night Moon City, because I called you a brat, I was yelled at, Night God Thunder said gloomily. Great-uncle in Night Moon City, who dared to yell at you? Night Sorrow stood up and poured wine for everyone. Your great-uncle talked about Night Sorrow in Night Moon City, but there were people from Night Moon who didn't want to listen. In the end, we were all kicked off the beast carriage. This shows that you did well. It shows that the people of Night Moon acknowledge you. We are all happy, Night God said with a wild laugh. It's my fault. I made great-uncle uncomfortable. I'll drink as an apology. Night Sorrow took the bowl and drank it in one gulp. Slow down, Yu Qing said when she saw Night Sorrow drink a bowl. Don't worry about that. Night Sorrow has been drinking wine like water since he was young. Papa Gu smiled and nodded at Yu Qing. They didn't drink much during dinner. Then, Yi Linghuan asked Night Sorrow what he thought of the big picture. Yi Shang's intention was to stabilize the situation first, and then deal with his enemies one by one. Okay, then we'll do as you say. Originally, we wanted to deal with the Tianfeng dynasty first. Now that the Tianfeng dynasty no longer exists, it doesn't matter which one we deal with first, Yi Linghuan said. After drinking, Yi Linghuan and the two emperors left. Because today was Night Sorrow's day to meet his parents, they had a lot to talk about. Under Yang Lei's suggestion, they went to the edge of the lake. Papa Gu couldn't fly, so it was Night Sorrow who brought Papa Gu down. When they reached the lake, Aoi began to make tea, and everyone chatted casually. Mother, why didn't you bring little sister out? Night Sorrow asked Yu Qing. You might not know, but this time, we came out to prepare for the battle. So your sister is cultivating with the Shenyue Emperor, who is recuperating, and we didn't let her follow. Yu Qing said with a smile. Qing, let's call the child by his name in the future. Xiao Er's name is in the past. Now, our child who survived and was reborn is called Night Sorrow. Yi Wuyo looked at his wife and said, Then we'll do as you say. Yu Qing nodded. Night Sorrow, in the future, if there's anything, tell father. Don't take it all on yourself. Let's not talk about father's strength, but our Night Moon people dare to fight against the world. Yi Wuyo patted Night Sorrow's shoulder and said, After not taking care of his son for 20 years, Yi Wuyo didn't want his son to be under any pressure. Father, mother, I've grown up. You don't have to worry too much. Night Sorrow enjoyed this kind of warmth. After chatting for a long time, the group went back to rest. Night Sorrow sent Papa Gu to the door of the pavilion. Father, it's been hard on you all these years. Although I found my parents, you will always be my father. Father understands. In the future, I will cultivate when I'm free. When I'm free, I will go to the lake to fish. When you have a child, I will help you take care of the child. Father's shoulders can still carry a child. Papa Gu said with a smile. Chapter 770. Genius remembers love in 1 second/small? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. You reap what you sow. Who can you blame? It's good enough that we didn't kill him. Mr. Gu said angrily. He was angry at Chen Chen's ingratitude and that Chen Chen had tricked him in Night Sorrow. We didn't kill him because he's also a pitiful person. If we cripple his cultivation, he won't be able to cause any more trouble. We'll let him live an ordinary life. From now on, we'll be passers-by and have nothing to do with him, Night Sorrow said to Mr. Gu. Mr. Gu nodded. He understood that this was the end of Chen Chen's matter. His path and fate had been set. There was no possibility of him causing any more trouble. Seeing that Mr. Gu went to rest, Night Sorrow returned to the main building. There were only servants in the main building. Sikong Chuyu and the other two had returned to their attic to cultivate. Now the mansion had been expanded and an attic had been added. There were also more servants. The two maids who ran out with Mr. Gu also came here. The main reason was that they didn't have a good place to go. After letting the servants rest, Night Sorrow entered the secret cultivation room. After entering the secret cultivation room, Night Sorrow flashed into the space-time pagoda. Look at the main page. Chapter, Section, Upper X. Seeing Night Sorrow enter, she stopped cultivating. She stood up and tidied her skirt. Not bad. Congratulations on meeting your parents. Baidu search, love, go xiao xua, www.aichux.com. I'm happy today. Do you want to drink? Night Sorrow sat at the table and asked. She nodded and sat opposite Night Sorrow. I've always thought that white hair is ugly, but it's not bad on you. It looks different and has a different charm, Night Sorrow said as he poured the wine. If it were someone else, I'd really want to say that I'm really blind. My silver hair is produced by my bloodline. I was born with silver hair. She glanced at Night Sorrow. In fact, the word really blind was meant for Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow didn't care. As long as she didn't talk nonsense on serious matters, he wouldn't care about these small matters. After drinking a jug of wine, Yi Shang went to meditate and cultivate. Right now, he was consolidating his true qi cultivation and working hard to raise the cultivation of the Myriad Dao's treasured tome. This was because the next level of the Myriad Dao's treasured tome would be the fourth level of the spirit refinement realm. It was the middle stage of the spirit refinement realm. Seeing that Yi Shang was cultivating diligently, Shi also began to meditate. She also wanted to improve her cultivation and restore it to the realm of a 4-star saint as soon as possible. After cultivating the basics for an entire night, Night Sorrow left the space-time pagoda. After leaving the secret cultivation room, he went to the courtyard to cultivate his spear arts. Night Sorrow's spear cultivation was to find the feeling and cultivate the compatibility of the space splitter spear. Aoi then fetched water for Night Sorrow to wash his face. When Night Sorrow was washing up, Yi Wuyo and Yu Qing came over. Father, mother. Yi Shang wiped his face and greeted the two of them. You're cultivating your spear so early? Yu Qing asked when she saw Night Sorrow's space splitter spear beside him. I'm just stretching my body and cultivating the compatibility of my spear. Night Sorrow put the space splitter spear back into the holster on his back. Night Sorrow, the 2 spears on your back are high-grade spirit weapons. Can you use them? Yi Wuyo asked Night Sorrow. One is a black iron spear that I've been using since I started hunting. It later became a high-grade spirit weapon, so it's still compatible. The other one I prepared for my soul doppelganger. I usually use it to cultivate the compatibility. Night Sorrow said to Yi Wuyo. He didn't need to hide anything from his parents. All right, mother, I have a face-preserving pill here. Take it. Yang Lei took out the face-preserving pill that Night Sorrow gave her. It was the last one. Mother doesn't need it. Take it. Yu Qing said with a smile. After a few days of interaction, she liked her 3 daughters-in-law very much. 9th senior sister. Mother is a 7th level venerable. Why would I need a face-preserving pill? Night Sorrow said with a smile. Ah, mother's cultivation is so high. Sikong Chuyu and the other 2 were shocked when they heard Night Sorrow say Yu Qing's cultivation. Your mother is the eldest daughter of Beiyu City. She was famous back then. Yi Wuyo said with a smile. Mother, you are of the earth attribute. What weapon do you use? Night Sorrow asked Yu Qing. Other women usually use long swords. However, Beiyu City's inheritance is saber techniques. It's a war saber. Yu Qing said with a smile. It was very rare for women to practice saber techniques. Then I have a gift for mother. Night Sorrow said and took out what he had obtained from the small space in Taichuan. This aura. It's a sacred weapon. That crystal is an origin stone? Yi Wuyo said in surprise when he saw Night Sorrow take out the 5-foot war saber and the yellow crystal. Father is right. I obtained it by chance. It suits mother. Night Sorrow was very happy. To him, it was a treasure of little value. Now, it was very suitable for his mother. Yu Qing looked at Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow, these are all treasures. You can use them to exchange for what you need. Night Sorrow shook his head. I have everything I need. You can take it. There are also 3 dragon spirit pills. You can use them to cultivate. Knight Sorrow had been providing resources to many people. How could he be short of his parents? Knight Sorrow gave Yi Wuyo and Yu Qing a bottle of Life Essence Liquid and Origin Essence Liquid. He also gave them some top-grade crystals. Yi Wuyo sighed. He was happy, but at the same time, he felt guilty. Knight Sorrow had taken out a lot. To Knight Sorrow, being able to help his parents was the happiest thing. Then, Knight Sorrow took his parents and Sikong Chuyu to the training ground. Now, Sikong Chuyu, Aoi, and Yang Lei did not have to worry about increasing their cultivation. They just needed to work hard to stabilize their cultivation. After watching the members of the God-slaying team cultivate for a while, Knight Sorrow took his parents for a walk around the city in the sky. He also went to the residence that Yi Linglan had arranged for Yi Wuyo and his wife. Then, he went to the lake to cultivate. Yi Wuyo and Yu Qing, who did not follow Knight Sorrow to the lake, sat on wooden chairs in the courtyard of their residence and talked. Qing, our son is a person with great luck. Those who are related to him will receive some luck. When I was seriously injured back then, I thought that I would be like this for the rest of my life. With the help of our son's Life Essence Liquid, not only did I solve the problem of my old injuries and life essence, but my cultivation also improved. You have the Origin Stone, so you will have a chance to enter the Saint Realm in the future, Yi Wuyo said. But this is equivalent to using his opportunity. What will happen to him in the future? Yu Qing was still worried about Knight Sorrow. You have not reached the peak of the Venerable Realm and have not touched the domain of the power of rules, so you can't feel it. Our son has the power of rules. I didn't ask what the situation is, but it is definitely a good thing. Yi Wuyo nodded to Yu Qing. All these years without the help of the family, it must have been very, very difficult for him to make a name for himself. He fought step by step to get to where he is now. Ye Yue will be fighting next, but he still can't stop. I don't know what father plans to do next. Yu Qing lowered her head and thought. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.